Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
I reincarnated as Marvel's Sentinel with insane stats. Part 2. When Homelander landed on the rooftop, the concrete surface sank by half a circle. The exhaust fan casing rattled loudly from the shock, and the three survivors who had just escaped from the warehouse lay prone on the ground, their coughs stuck in their throats. On the fire escape in the distance, Harry was being dragged downward by two bodyguards. He kept looking back, half his face blanched by the glow of the advertising screens between the buildings. Homelander glanced that way. Just a glance. His gaze returned to Han Yu's back, where the pair of black wings was still held up in the smoke, their edges tattered, the insides appearing to writhe as if with living things. His gold and red cape settled back behind him. The smile he wore at press conferences was gone, his lips pressed into a thin line. Vought does not need a second uncontrolled god. Han Yu's fingers gripped the file folder, the cold chain box digging into the area below his ribs, making his tooth roots ache. God. He retreated half a step toward the edge of the roof, his boot heels crunching on gravel. Has your company's marketing department gotten addicted to packaging your persona? Homelander blinked. Heat began to burn deep within his pupils. In his earpiece, the sound of Nora typing frantically was chaotic. A-19, the survivors, vehicles have already cleared the first street, the second one is blocked by a fire truck, I'm changing the traffic lights. Stop provoking him, do you hear me? Stop. How much longer? 90 seconds. At least 90 seconds. Han Yu raised a hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, spreading his black wings to shield the three survivors behind him. The black core swelled within his shoulders and back, as if trying to force his bones apart, and the projection of the void's dark side crawled up his spine, carrying cold whispers. Let go. Tear him apart. Han Yu pressed his tongue against his canine teeth, the taste of blood rising. Homelander, you're too slow. He stared into those glowing red eyes. The Osborn transfer list has already left the building, Vought won't be able to erase it completely this time. Homelander's facial muscles twitched. Do you think a few videos and a few documents can change anything? He took a step forward, the concrete beneath his feet cracking into spiderweb patterns. One of the survivors behind Han Yu couldn't hold back, their knees scraping against the ground with a harsh sound. They will forget. Homelander's voice lowered. They will always forget. Once I stand in front of the cameras and say this was a terrorist attack, say that Vought will protect everyone, they will applaud. Nora cursed in the earpiece. The second vehicle has turned out. The third is still at the building exit, security is in pursuit. Han Yu pressed his right hand back, signaling the people on the ground not to move. Homelander saw it. You're stalling. Red light exploded from his eyes, and two beams of heat vision swept across horizontally, slicing through the rooftop water tank first. The thick iron plating split like butter. Before the water could spray out, the heat beams were already pressing toward Han Yu's chest. Han Yu's black wings snapped shut. Sizzle. The black wing membrane took the full force of the heat vision, the surface tissue burning and curling, the stench of char mixing with steam as it rushed into his nostrils. The impact shoved him backward, his boot soles gouging two white marks into the concrete, his lower back slamming against the rooftop parapet. Just barely. Rubble fell from outside the wall, and it took 2 seconds for the faint sound to travel up. The old wound on Han Yu's left shoulder was grazed by the heat, the fabric burning through, and the black markings beneath his skin surged toward his arm as if fed by fire. The whispers in his mind became clear, laughing against his eardrums. Kill him. Pull the whole building down. Make them all shut up. Han Yu dug his fingers into the edge of the parapet, his nails splitting, blood seeping down into the cement cracks. Blackness crawled to the edges of his pupils, and the analytical vision inside the wing membrane was compressed, flickering intermittently. Han Yu. Nora's breathing crashed into the earpiece, trembling with urgency. The third vehicle is moving, it's moving. Don't do anything reckless, A-19, answer me. His Adam's apple bobbed. I'm here. The two words squeezed out, and the black marking stopped at his wrists. Homelander tilted his head, the red light dissipating, a hint of disgust appearing on his face. You sound like you're in pain. He stepped over a mobile phone that had fallen to the ground. Its screen was cracked, but the live stream interface was still lit, the comments scrolling by rapidly. Failures belong in the laboratory. Homelander walked closer. Vought gave you power, and you use it to bite the hand of your master. You things always think you have a choice. Han Yu stuffed the file folder into the inside of his jacket, wrapping the cold chain box tightly with black tissue and binding it to his side. The movement was small, but Homelander saw it clearly. Still hiding it, he reached out to grab him. Han Yu didn't rush forward. Instead, he sidestepped and stepped onto the parapet. Homelander's palm grazed his chest, shattering a chunk of concrete. Debris flew up, striking Han Yu's cheek and leaving a long, thin cut. "You can't escape." Homelander accelerated, the wind from his shoulders blowing the exhaust fan cover away. The black wings behind Han Yu were pressed inward, like two umbrella surfaces beaten down by a rainstorm. His feet were already hanging over the edge of the building, and the police lights and headlights on the street below were squeezed into lines. Nora's voice was lower. "The vehicles have cleared 3 streets. The surveillance link has been severed. You can withdraw." "Copy that." Han Yu suddenly let go of the parapet, falling backward. Homelander's outstretched hand grabbed empty air, his expression darkening. He dove off the roof after him, his cape brushing past the advertising frame. As Han Yu fell, his left hand hooked onto the bottom beam of the advertising frame, and the black wings at his shoulder blades snapped open, a dull sound of bone and flesh stretching coming from his back. It hurt like hell. He gritted his teeth and used the rebound of the advertising frame to whip his body upward. The black tissue at the edges of the black wings was torn open by the wind, and the sentry energy spectrum that had been suppressed for too long lit up inside. Golden light surged from the cracks, first as a line, then spreading into a thin, blinding arc. Homelander's eyes narrowed. Han Yu swept past the building in the opposite direction. The outer layer of the black wings remained a shadow, but the golden light inside sliced through the night like a blade. Homelander reached out to grab him, but his fingertips only touched the edge of the burning force field. Boom! A golden shockwave exploded between the two. Homelander's body was pushed half a meter sideways, and a piece of his cape was torn off at the bottom right corner, the red fabric spinning away and catching on the rooftop antenna rack. Han Yu's chest felt as if it had been struck by a heavy hammer, and he plummeted diagonally toward the glass curtain wall of the next building. Hiss! His shoulder and back slammed into the curtain wall frame, the glass cracking into a large spiderweb. The black wings retracted and then expanded, barely pulling him away from the exterior wall 20 stories up. The file folder was still there, the cold chain box was still there, and the condensation indicator light on the corner of the box flickered with a faint blue glow. Screams erupted from below. "What was that? Did you get it? Did you get it?" Dozens of mobile phones were raised toward the sky. In the footage, a shadow like black wings fell from the Osborn rooftop, drawing a golden arc of light beside Homelander. In the distance, the news helicopter had been tracking the fire at the warehouse, but now the camera shifted violently, and the host's voice exploded through the speakers and the live stream simultaneously. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just captured footage of Homelander pursuing an unknown super-powered individual. He has black wing-like structures, and golden energy reactions have appeared within them. My God, a new super-powered individual has appeared." Han Yu hung from a steel beam behind the billboard, his left arm shaking violently. The parts of the black wings burned through by the heat vision were still smoking, the golden force field retreating deep into the cracks, leaving only a few wisps of light tracing along the black tissue. In his earpiece, Nora panted twice, as if she had just been fished out of water. "Are you alive? For now. You tore his cape just now." Han Yu looked up. Homelander was hovering outside the Osborn rooftop, looking down at the missing corner of his cape. Cameras below, helicopter searchlights, and live streaming phones were all aimed at him. His face turned toward Han Yu, inch by inch. Han Yu spat the blood in his mouth into the wind, his black wings spreading open again, the golden light leaking from the holes illuminating half his face. "Nora, back up all public signals. Already recording. Don't be too polite with the title." There was a half-beat pause on Nora's end, then the sound of typing resumed. "Fine, the Sentinel's debut." Her voice was still a bit hoarse. "Don't die yet, the traffic revenue hasn't been settled." 47 minutes ago, when Han Yu rolled from behind the billboard's steel frame into the maintenance passage, Black Wing was still smoking. Homelander's heat vision had burned through half of the advertising screen, but the camera hadn't been completely destroyed. Nora hijacked 3 nearby outdoor screens and 2 traffic live feeds, pushing the footage of Homelander hovering in midair, preparing for a follow-up attack, directly onto the large street corner screens, while conveniently adding the headline, "The 7 Heroic Rescue on Site." Homelander paused in front of the lens for 2 seconds. He heard the distant sirens and the screams of the onlookers, glanced at the burnt billboard, and finally just smiled at the camera before turning and ascending. That smile was colder than the pursuit. During those few seconds, Nora drove up in a small refrigerated truck. Han Yu shoved the cold chain box and the data bag into the cargo hold before collapsing inside himself. His left shoulder had been grazed by the heat vision, the outer edge of Blackwing was charred, and the old injury from his landing ached all the way to his ribs. Less than an hour had passed from the fall off the rooftop to the temporary safe house. The cold chain box's blue light was still on, and the data bag was only stained with blood, with no pages missing. By the time Nora pinned up the black cloth and connected the temporary lines, the Seven Towers press conference had just begun. Applause pushed Starlight Annie forward. She stood in the center of the Seven Towers press hall. The circular lift platform beneath her feet hadn't fully stabilized, yet the cameras all around were already glowing with a ring of red dots. Ashley stood beside her, smiling so hard her teeth shone, her cue cards flipped to the last page, speaking so fast it was as if she were afraid someone would steal her lines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the newest member of the Seven, Starlight. The applause grew louder. Annie raised her hand and waved twice at the practiced angle. Her uniform was a temporary modification of an older model, the shoulder seams didn't sit quite right, and a loose thread at her waist was pricking her skin. She endured it without touching it, her eyelashes still catching the glittering light from the spotlights. The Seven. When she was little, she had stuck those words on her bedroom wall until the corners of the paper curled, and her mother had even repaired them with clear tape once. Now, those cameras were pointed at her, the room was filled with contracted reporters, and the cheers lifted her up from the soles of her feet. Her smile was a bit stiff. Thank you so much, I am very honored to be standing here. Annie gripped the microphone, her knuckles turning white. I will strive to become a hero you can all trust. Ashley immediately followed up, of course, she will. Starlight represents hope, and she represents the courage and purity of a new generation. Backstage, some people applauded, while others looked down at their watches. After the press conference, two VOT staff members led her into a side corridor. One handed her a uniform bag, and the other handed her a thick stack of schedules, the cover stamped with the Seven's logo, detailing the next 3 weeks of commercial appearances, media interviews, charity shoots, and training assessments. You'll try on your official uniform this afternoon, psychological questionnaire at 3:30, and a team entry short film shoot at 4:15, the staff member said, tucking a pen behind their ear. Don't be nervous, Annie, everyone is like this on their first day. Thank you. She tried to smile. The camera at the end of the corridor turned half an inch. The red light went out, replaced by a tiny maintenance yellow light. No one looked up. 3 lines away, Nora rested her feet on the edge of her chair, chewing on half an energy bar, her fingertips flying across the console. Taking over the 7-tower backstage camera C-17. The audio is garbage. Those fools at VOT can't even be bothered to replace the microphones. Han Yu's muffled cough came through the headset. He sat on an old sofa in the temporary safe house, his left shoulder wrapped in bandages, underneath which the scorch marks from the heat vision were still visible. The cold chain box sat by his feet, and the data bag was weighed down by a brick. The window was nailed shut with 2 layers of black cloth, and the blue light from the screen fell on his face, making him look even colder. Keep recording. You should look at your own wounds first, buddy. You just fell out from right under Homelander's nose, and you still want to watch the rookie's orientation. Han Yu tossed the blood-stained tissue into the trash can. The Deep is on that floor. Nora paused for half a second. A new window popped up on the screen. The Deep was walking out at the other end of the corridor, holding a coffee. He was wearing that ridiculous yet expensive uniform, a familiar smile on his face, his pace deliberately slowed to block Annie's path to the changing room. Nora bit off the energy bar. This guy really knows how to pick his moments. Annie stopped, clutching the uniform bag. Hi, rookie, the Deep raised his coffee cup. Not a bad press conference, except for that last part being a bit too Boy Scout. Thank you, I'm still adjusting. Annie tried to step around him. The Deep moved a step. The path was blocked. Don't be in such a rush. The 7 isn't as clean as school, you know. He lowered his voice, his gaze sweeping from the schedule to her face. Everyone has to learn the rules. Homelander has his rules, Madeline has her rules, and I have mine. Annie's fingers gripped the straps of the uniform bag, the plastic bag crinkling with a harsh sound. I have a fitting. The fitting can wait. The Deep stepped closer. You want to stay, right? A seat in the 7. How many people are lined up? begging for a chance on their knees. Please move. Her voice was very small. The Deep smiled, rubbing his coffee cup against the wall to block her other path of retreat. Don't make that face, rookie. I'm helping you. Later on, the media will ask how you're fitting into the team, and you can't just answer, "Oh, I offended a senior member on my first day." Annie's shoulders tensed, her lips pressed until they turned white. I said, please move. Shish. The Deep leaned in, the grease in his tone no longer hidden. Be smart. You think you can make it here just by glowing. Everyone here has to prove themselves. Her back hit the wall, and the schedule scattered all over the floor. In front of the screen, the sound of Nora's keyboard stopped. Han Yu didn't speak, but his right hand pressed down on the sofa armrest. The wood made a cracking sound, and a fine fissure split along the edge of the armrest. Han Yu, record everything. The Deep reached down to pick up the schedule on the floor, deliberately pausing by her feet and looking up at her. Don't be so nervous, I'm not going to eat you. Annie shoved him away hard. The Deep hadn't expected her to actually dare to touch him. Coffee spilled onto his chest, and he cursed under his breath. Annie turned and ran, clutching the uniform bag, her heels clicking chaotically on the floor tiles as she bolted straight for the women's restroom. The door slammed shut. In the corridor, the Deep looked at the coffee stain on his chest, his expression darkening. He took 2 steps toward the restroom, but seeing a staff member pushing a clothing rack around the corner, he immediately put his smile back on. The rookie is under too much pressure, he said, spreading his hands. I was just joking with her. Bullshit. Nora dragged that video into the encrypted zone, her finger hovering over the publish button. I'm leaking it now. New member of the 7 blocked in the corridor on her first day. VOD stock price will sneeze the moment the market opens. Strike while it's hot, that's safest. Han Yu watched the camera feed outside the restroom. Annie sat beside the sink, her back against the partition, the uniform bag dropped at her feet. She held her phone face down on her knees, her hands trembling violently, her fingernails digging red marks into her skin. The faucet wasn't tightened properly, and a thin stream of water hit the basin. The sound was far quieter than the applause in the press hall, yet it was much more piercing. Don't post it yet. Are you crazy? Nora turned her chair. VOD is best at cleaning up trash. Give them half an hour. The surveillance footage will be gone. The Deep will say the rookie had a nervous breakdown. Ashley will issue a statement of concern, and that'll be it. Back it up in 3 places, keep the link timestamps, and put it on an anonymous channel. And then what? Wait for her to figure it out on her own. She's terrified right now. Han Yu pulled the screen closer, his fingertips stained with dried blood, leaving a dark red mark on the desktop. It's her first day in the 7. If we leak it for her now, the media will hound her for details. VOD will lock her in a PR room to practice her testimony, and the Deep will still hide behind the team. She won't even have the chance to speak for herself. The irritation on Nora's face froze. Han Yu's voice was hoarse. Hand the card to her. Whether she plays it or not is up to her. Nora stared at him, her tongue pressing against the inside of her cheek. You're such a pain. Yeah, still, yeah, I'm insulting you. I heard you. Nora kicked her chair back to the desk, cursed in Spanish, but her hands returned to the keyboard. She split the video into 3 segments. The panoramic view of the corridor, the close-up of the Deep blocking the path, and the complete timeline of Annie pushing him away and running into the restroom. She embedded the original checksum into each segment and packed them into an anonymous short link. On the receiving end, she didn't use the VOD internet. Starlight had just joined, so her personal phone hadn't been fully taken over by the company yet. Nora pulled her recently logged-in device ID from the backstage guest Wi-Fi, routed it through 2 relays, and pushed the message to a temporary anonymous channel. Before sending, she glanced at Han Yu again. Last time, are you sure we aren't leaking it? Han Yu shook his head. Sent. In the restroom, Annie's phone buzzed. She recoiled as if burned, her fingers retracting before slowly turning the screen over. A new message popped up on the anonymous channel. No avatar, no nickname, just a single line of text. If you want to make him pay the price, this surveillance footage belongs to you. Below it were 3 encrypted video segments and an extraction code. Annie didn't click on the first segment. She first looked up at the restroom door, as if afraid someone would rush in and snatch her phone. Outside, the sound of high heels walking by echoed, along with 2 female employees laughing and discussing their lunch salads. Those sounds, filtered through the door, were so normal they made it hard to breathe. She pressed the phone against her chest and closed her eyes. Tears hung on her eyelashes but didn't fall. After a few seconds, she sat up straighter, picked up the uniform bag from the floor, smoothed out the opening, and gathered the schedule sheets one by one. Her hands were still shaking, but her thumb had already pressed on the video thumbnail, dragging it to the most critical timestamp. The Deep's face appeared on the screen. Him blocking her way, leaning in, lowering his voice, every action was captured clearly by the corridor camera. Annie watched for a dozen seconds, suddenly pressed pause, and swallowed hard. She saved the video into a hidden folder on her phone and copied the extraction code into her notes. After doing this, she steadied herself against the sink, stood up, turned on the faucet, and splashed water on her face. The person in the mirror was pale. "Don't cry," she said to herself. Her voice cracked a little. On the other side of the screen, Nora turned off the view of the restroom door, leaving only the corridor surveillance. She didn't switch to a close-up again. Satisfied, she picked up her cold coffee, took a sip, and frowned. "Tastes terrible." Han-yu leaned back against the sofa, the movement straining his wound and causing cold sweat to bead on his forehead. He snapped off a splinter of wood from the cracked armrest and threw it under the table. "Thanks," Nora scoffed. "Spare me. Next time you fall from the 20th floor, I'm going to turn your Blackwing photo into a meme with the caption, 'Sentinel landing failed.' The traffic would be good. You're quite the quick wit." She talked tough, but her hands changed the permissions for Starlight's video to one-way ownership. On Han-yu's end, only the verification hash and transmission log remained, making it impossible to bypass Annie and directly publish the original video. After finishing, Nora pushed the log to Han-yu to see. Han-yu scanned it. "You deleted our ability to publish it ourselves." "Yes." Nora pushed the coffee cup aside. "Just in case your wound gets infected and your brain short-circuits one day, and you start talking to me about choice again. I'm blocking that path first." Han-yu looked at the permission change, his tense jaw relaxing slightly. "Well done. Don't praise me, it's cheesy." She pulled up the 7-tower corridor view again. The Deep had changed his jacket and was complaining to a male assistant about the cleaning crew being too slow. In the press hall, the Starlight entry short film was still playing on loop. On screen, Annie smiled brightly, but in reality, she had just come out of the restroom, her eyes red, though her steps were no longer as chaotic as before. A female VOT staff member walked up to her. "Annie, are you okay? Ashley is looking for you." Annie switched the uniform bag to her other hand, her phone gripped in her palm. "I'm fine." She paused. "I need to see legal, or the HR complaint window first." "It's in the company manual, right?" The staff member was stunned. At the end of the corridor, the Deep turned his head. Annie didn't look away from his gaze. In the surveillance footage, her fingers tightened, the phone screen darkened by her palm. That anonymous video lay quietly in the encrypted folder, like a blade yet to be unsheathed. In the safe house, Nora let out a low whistle. "All right then, the rookie knows how to use her cards." Han-yu was just about to speak when the old-fashioned vibration alarm at the door suddenly went off twice. Beep, beep. Nora's expression tightened, and she switched to the surveillance of the alley downstairs. The image flickered. A bearded man in a black trench coat stood by the dumpster, looking up at the second-floor window. Huey huddled behind him, clutching a brown paper bag, his face paler than wall dust. Nora lowered the volume. "Someone is looking for you." Han-yu dragged the data bag to the edge of the table, the blue light of the cold chain box flickering under the black cloth. Outside the door, the bearded man raised his hand and knocked 3 times. Han-yu did not open the door immediately. The old-fashioned vibration alarm was still trembling on the door frame. After the beeping stopped, the only sounds left in the safe house were the server fans and Nora typing on her keyboard. Under a black cloth on the table, the blue light of a cold chain box flickered on and off, with solid-state storage sticks, an Osborne transfer manifest, and a list of adult experiments dragged from inside VOT pressed down beside it. Nora zoomed in on the surveillance feed of the alley entrance. The man in the black trench coat looked up. A beard covered half his face. He wasn't holding a gun, yet he stood there looking more like trouble than anyone armed. Huey cowered behind him, his knuckles white as he gripped a craft paper bag, wrinkling it. "Billy Butcher." Han-yu reached out and pushed the cold chain box half an inch under the table. "Let him in." "Are you sure?" Nora's fingers hovered over the access control interface. "This guy looks like he'd take everything in the room to make a bomb." "He would." The door lock clicked. Butcher pushed the door open and walked in. His first glance swept over the gaps in the curtains, the vents, and the shadows under the table, finally landing on the burn mark on Han Yu's left shoulder. He bared his teeth in a grimace, dispensed with the pleasantries, and tossed a crumpled document bag onto the table. Sentinel. His British accent sounded like sandpaper. You forced Homelander back from the billboard, and Vought is now in deep shit. While they're busy cleaning up their mess, we're going to stab right in. Huey followed him in, his footsteps faltering when he saw the list on the table. These names. Compound V Adult Experiment Projects. Han Yu pushed the top page over. The living, the missing, the transferred. What about that bag in your hand? Huey placed the craft paper bag on the edge of the table, his movements slow. Copies of insurance claims from near the Robin accident, and some of A-Train's activity routes. My dad got an old client to help get them. Butcher scoffed. Good boy handing in his homework. Fine, it's enough. He put a cigarette in his mouth but didn't light it. He pressed his palm onto the Vought adult experiment list and slapped the Osborn documents to the side. Vought uses adults to test drugs, and Osborn trades them dirty stuff. You have wings, you have a force field, and you can survive under Homelander's hands. We'll take out a site tonight, and by tomorrow morning, we'll make their stock prices kneel and sing hymns. Which site? The 7-tower logistics entrance, or the transport convoy for the adult project team? Butcher raised his eyelids. You charge in front, and Huey and I will collect evidence. If you can't blow the door open, you smash it open. If you encounter a soup fool, you pin her down. If Homelander comes, you stall him for 2 minutes. 2 minutes is enough for me to get the data out. Huey's face went even paler. Butcher, you didn't say you were going to make him stall Homelander. I said I wanted to win. Butcher turned his head to look at him. Your girlfriend got turned into a puddle of red soup by A-Train, and now you're starting to worry about a monster. The room went cold for a beat. Nora sat in the corner with her headphones pressing against one ear. On her screen were the hospital's surveillance paths and the residual footage from the 7 Towers backend. Her fingers slowed as she typed. Han Yu didn't look at Butcher. He picked up the insurance claim copies Huey brought and flipped through 2 pages. Vought's formatting was beautiful, the terms were beautiful, and the compensation figures were beautiful, beautiful enough to look like a napkin covering a bloodstain. You're quite well prepared. Han Yu put the papers down. Roots, media, explosive points, and a monster that can be caught on camera. Butcher narrowed his eyes. You said the word, monster, yourself. You want me to be on the front line. Han Yu looked up. If I fail, Vought captures me. If I die, Vought studies me. If I kill the wrong person, the whole city calls Sentinel crazy. You guys leave with the data and keep looking for the next gun. Sounds fair enough. Butcher took the cigarette from his mouth and pointed at the list. Look at these names. Carl Pike, bones growing out of his arms. Marion Duran, heart rotted by compound verses, and you, A-19. Vought treats you like livestock to concoct drugs, and Homelander treats you like toys to be crushed. You're talking to me about fairness now. Huey stepped forward half a step. Han Yu, we can cooperate. Robin, I want to know who was behind A-Train running that route. I also want Vought to pay the price, but do you want revenge, or do you want to know why Robin died? Huey's lips moved, but he didn't answer. He looked down at the craft paper bag, his fingertips digging into the corner of the paper, tearing a small hole in it. Butcher laughed, a short sound. Niece, giving little Huey a moral lesson. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Han Yu. Then let me ask you, if Homelander were standing in front of you, wearing that flag-colored rag, telling you he'd touched Becca, saying he destroyed my home, saying he could destroy anyone else, would you save the living first? Or would you twist his head off? Han Yu's hand stopped at the edge of the list. The name Becca was like an old nail, deliberately hammered into the tabletop by Butcher. He waited for Han Yu to get angry, waited for those black wing membranes and golden energy to emerge from the wounds, waiting for this failed Compound V experiment in front of him to admit that hatred was the most stable path. Thwack! Han Yu slapped another list onto the table. The pages scattered, revealing a few lines of bolded markings. Temporary transfer, basement level, cleaning window, reduced night shift. Between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. tonight, Vought is going to clean up a batch of adult experiment survivors. Han Yu pressed his finger onto Carl Pike's name. The location is in the basement of a hospital. 7 survivors, at least 2 can still talk. If you want to poke a hole in Vought, living people are more useful than explosions. Butcher's expression sank. You want to play a rescue game? I'll save the people who can breathe first. Ah, hero sickness. Butcher spat a curse to the side. Soups are all the same, hell. Wrap yourselves in a nice sounding name, and in the end, you all need others to make way for you. Put a halo on livestock, and they're still. The sound of typing stopped. Nora sat in the corner, her fingers hovering over the keycaps. She had no expression on her face, just pushed her unfinished cold coffee further in, as if afraid the cup would get in the way. Condensation clung to the outside of the coffee cup, leaving a wet ring on the tabletop. Hanyu stood up, went to the small electric kettle, poured a cup of hot water, and placed it by Nora's hand. The sound of the cup hitting the table was very soft. Switch to this. Nora looked up at him, the corners of her mouth twitching as if she wanted to retort, but in the end, she just pushed the cold coffee away. Meddlesome. Yeah. Watching this scene, the mockery on Butcher's face faded for half a second before he quickly suppressed it again. You really do take yourself for a captain. In my safe house, I make the rules. Hanyu resorted the documents on the table into 3 piles. The VOD adult experiment list, the Osborne transfer documents, and the transfer clues for the hospital basement. He moved slowly, squaring off every page as if dismantling chaotic gunpowder into manageable threads. Huey looked up. If we go to the hospital, can we find the answer to what happened to Robin? You can find part of it. Hanyu handed the insurance claim copies back to him. A train's route, VOT's deletion of files, the transfer time for the adult project, these threads are already intertwined. If you keep investigating, you'll run into dirtier things. Huey's Adam's apple bobbed. I can handle it. Butcher patted him on the shoulder. That's more like it. Hanyu looked at Huey. There's a line between handling it and throwing your life away. You can come along tonight, but follow orders. Don't rush out and scream Robin's name, don't shove your phone in security's face, and don't trust any forms VOT gives you. Huey nodded, but stopped halfway. What about Robin's family? Should I tell them? Tell them you're busy tonight, but don't tell them the location. Hanyu pushed a spare communication patch over. If you make it back alive, then you can tell them what you can. Huey gripped the patch in his palm, his eyes a little red, and he forced his head away. Butcher picked up the hospital clues and took a look. He huffed through his nose. Laundry chute, freight elevator, the button for the second basement level removed. VOT's cleaners are quite proficient. Nora started typing again, her speed returning. I can loop the surveillance for the hospital's first floor and back door. The basement level has an independent internal network, it needs to be accessed after getting close. Don't expect me to open every door remotely. That's enough. Hanyu picked up his black jacket, the burn mark on his shoulder half covered by the collar. Butcher, if you want to cooperate to investigate VOT, fine. If you want me to kill people according to your hate list, forget it. Butcher shoved the cigarette back into the pack and stared at Hanyu for a few seconds. Homelander will force you to choose sooner or later. We'll talk about that when the day comes. You'll regret slowing down the blade. Hanyu folded the printout of the hospital basement and tucked it into his inner pocket. If the blade cuts innocent people, VOT will applaud for you. Butcher's face darkened. Huey stood between the two of them, frantically stuffing the documents back into the craft paper bag. Let's go to the hospital first. There's not much time, really. Don't argue here until dawn. Bullshit. Nora kept her head down, staring at the screen. You won't be arguing until dawn. That gray van downstairs has circled back for the 3rd time. Everyone in the safe house froze. The surveillance feed cut to the alley entrance. A gray van with no markings slowly slid past the street corner. Its windows were tinted, and the person in the passenger seat turned their head to look at the 2nd floor before quickly turning back. Hanyu picked up the gloves from the table and put one on his right hand. Take the back door. Butcher, you and Huey follow. Before entering the hospital, put your guns away. Butcher sneered, you're still telling me what to carry. Hanyu pulled open the hidden door and looked back at him. I'm telling you not to get the people I want to save killed first. Butcher muttered a low curse but still tightened the holster under his jacket. Huey hugged the craft paper bag and ducked into the hidden door, stumbling as he did. Hanyu reached out to steady his arm, then let go. Nora pushed the hot water cup aside and grabbed her computer bag. On the screen, the floor plan of the hospital basement glowed with red markers. 47 minutes left in the cleaning window. Han Yu turned off the main lights of the safe house, leaving only the server indicator lights flashing in the darkness. Then we'll get there before VOT. The emergency sign outside the hospital's main entrance shone blindingly bright, with ambulances entering and leaving one after another. Nurses pushed gurneys through the lobby, and no one noticed 3 people slipping into the laundry chute from behind the garbage compactor room in the side building. Huey had just stepped onto the slippery stairs when his shoe lost traction, and he lunged forward. Han Yu grabbed him by the back of his collar. Thanks, I can walk. Watch your step. Butcher walked at the back, the tranquilizer gun under his black trench coat pressed against his ribs. He looked up and scanned the security camera at the end of the corridor, and Norris' lowered voice came through his earpiece. Don't look at the lens, bearded man. If you stare at it for 3 seconds, someone in the surveillance room will ask why a laundry worker looks like a wanted criminal. Butcher curled his lip. My dear, just manage the screens. I'm managing the screens, and I'm also making sure you don't screw things up. Norris typing on her keyboard was mixed into the background noise. The first floor lobby is on a 30-second loop, and the basement corridor is on a 20-second loop. The elevator panel has been tampered with, and the button for the second basement level is gone. They don't want regular staff going down there. Han Yu stopped beside the laundry cart and reached out to touch the metal maintenance hatch on the wall. As his fingertips brushed over the edge of the screws, analytical vision spread across his field of vision, revealing circuits, door locks, and pressure sensors layer by layer. To the left, he pried open the maintenance hatch, revealing a narrow maintenance ladder behind it. Dampness and the smell of disinfectant wafted up from below, mixed with a heavier scent. Blood. Huey's face turned pale, and the craft paper bag in his hand was crumpled into a ball. They're keeping people under the hospital. The floors above are full of patients. Vought likes places like this. Butcher pulled out his tranquilizer gun, bright, clean, and if something goes wrong, they can just call it a medical accident. Han Yu glanced back at him. Butcher nudged his back teeth with his tongue and lowered the muzzle. Fine, let's save the people first. I remember your rules. They went down the maintenance ladder, and when their feet hit the concrete floor of the second basement level, the maintenance hatch above closed shut. The corridor lights were only half on, and a temporary sign reading, Instrument Sterilization Area, was posted on the wall, but behind it was a thick door fitted with an electronic lock. Intermittent gasps and the high-pitched screech of bed wheels rubbing against the floor came from the cracks in the door. Norris' voice stuttered for a moment. Han Yu, there are 7 vital signs behind the door. 2 are at low temperatures, 1 has an excessively high heart rate, and the one with the designation CP shows the most extreme fluctuations. The file name is Carl Pike, Chinese transcription Carl Pike, a user with bone-hardening abilities. The sedative record has been cut for 4 hours. 4 hours. Han Yu pressed the spare communication patch tighter behind his ear and placed his palm against the electronic lock. Low-level bio field spread out along his fingertips, like a thin metal film gripping the lock cylinder. Click. The door opened. The underground ward was colder than the corridor, with 7 hospital beds arranged behind plastic curtains. Some were strapped to the beds, their cheeks sunken and lips blue. Others had their eyes open, but their pupils were severely dilated. Transparent IV bags hung on the IV stands, the labels torn off, leaving only adhesive residue. A young nurse stood by the third bed, frantically changing an IV needle. She heard the door open, turned to see Han Yu and the others, and the color drained from her face instantly. You can't come in here, this area is locked down. Where are the VOT people? Han Yu asked. The nurse's lips trembled. The transport team hasn't arrived yet. I'm only responsible for nursing care. I don't know, I really. The man on the bed arched his back violently. The restraints snapped taut. The nurse turned back in fright. Carl Pike in the third bed had bloodshot eyes, and a garbled roar squeezed out of his throat. Lumps bulged under the skin of his forearms, as if white, sharp blades were pushing against the flesh to break out. Sedative. Han Yu barked. The nurse's hand shook, and the syringe dropped to the side of the bed, rolling to Han Yu's feet. Snap. The first restraint broke. Butcher raised his gun, the muzzle locking directly onto Carl's chest. Get out of the way. Carl broke free with his other hand, bone spurs piercing out from his forearm, chillingly white. He lunged at the nearest nurse, his speed chaotic and without method, yet his strength was terrifyingly great. The nurse's back hit the medicine cabinet, glass bottles shattered all over the floor, and her scream was caught in her throat. Han Yu arrived first. He blocked the nurse, lowered his shoulders, and took the full force of the punch Carl swung at his chest. The bone spur scraped across his jacket, tearing the fabric, and 3 bloody gashes were pulled from his chest to his ribs, with heat instantly gushing out. Huey gasped. Han Yu's heels were nailed to the floor. He didn't retreat half a step. Analytical vision flickered on Carl's hardened arm, marking out joint stress points, bone spur growth seams, and brittle zones of over-hardening. Carl swung for a second time. Get down. The nurse's legs gave out, and she slid down the medicine cabinet to the floor. Han Yu dodged the tip of the bone spur, throwing his right fist upward from below. When his fist collided with Carl's forearm, a crisp, numbing cracking sound echoed through the underground ward. Crack. The hardened bone arm snapped in the middle, half of the bone spur broke off and embedded into the nearby wall. Carl was knocked to his knees, his other hand pressing on his broken arm, a scream erupting from his throat as his forehead hit the floor tiles. Butcher's tranquilizer gun was still raised. Huey stared at the broken piece of bone spur, his Adam's apple bobbing. That's it. It's over. Not over yet. Han Yu bent down to pick up the syringe, checking the label and remaining amount. Nurse, retreat to the door. The nurse climbed up, holding onto the medicine cabinet, her knees still trembling. She glanced at Carl, then at the blood on Han Yu's chest, her mouth opening. Will he die? No. Butcher clicked his tongue. You really have patience. He almost slit her throat just now. Han Yu stepped on the bed sheet beside Carl's shoulder, rolled him onto his side, and pressed his palm against the back of his neck. Carl struggled, his broken arm twitching, and the bone-hardening state began to recede, the bulges under his skin retracting segment by segment, leaving only the edges of the wound pale. Don't move. Carl's breathing was like a broken bellows, tears and sweat mixed on his face. His teeth chattered, and his voice squeezed out of his throat. Don't hit me, don't. The medicine ran out. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I can't control it. They said they were changing locations today. They said if I didn't behave well, I'd go back into the box. Huey stood between 2 hospital beds, his fingers gripping the edge of the paper bag, which had been torn open. He saw the old needle marks on Carl's broken arm, then saw the red mark on the nurse's neck caused by the bone spur. His lips moved twice, but he didn't say anything. Han Yu pushed the sedative into Carl's shoulder. The syringe was pushed to the end, and Carl's tense back slowly collapsed. He cried without a sound, his forehead resting against the floor tiles, like a child abandoned on an operating table. Han Yu released the back of his neck but didn't move his foot away. Listen clearly, Carl Pike. Vought has harmed you, and I will settle that debt. But you swung your bone spur at the nurse, and that debt will be added to your account. Carl's eyelashes trembled, and tears dripped onto the floor. Han Yu kicked the broken bone spur into the corner, his voice cold. Being harmed by Vought doesn't mean you can harm ordinary people. The earpiece was silent for 2 seconds. A low intake of breath came from Nora's side, as if she had been holding it in. She didn't retort immediately. The sound of the keyboard paused for a beat before starting again. 11 minutes left in the corridor security window. Han Yu, there are spare sedatives and transport wristbands in the refrigerator on the right. The labels haven't been fully torn off. I'm sending the list back to the safe house. Butcher lowered his tranquilizer gun, staring at the 3 bloody gashes on Han Yu's chest. That rule of yours was painful to set. It's him who's in pain. You're bleeding too, mate. Huey fished gauze out of his pocket, but mistakenly pulled out a crumpled pack of chewing gum, his face turning even paler. I brought the wrong bag. The nurse trotted back from the door, clutching medical gauze and hemostatic patches in her hand. She just got close to Han Yu when she stopped again, as if afraid he, too, might suddenly explode with bone spurs. Han Yu took the gauze and pressed it directly onto the wound. Check the other 6 first. The nurse was stunned. Tell me what medicine they need. Han Yu pointed at Butcher. He'll move the people. Butcher raised an eyebrow. I've become a porter. Your aim is good, and your hands aren't broken. Bullshit. Butcher cursed, but still tucked the tranquilizer gun back into his trench coat and walked to the first bed to check the restraints. Little Huey, don't just stand there like a fool, push the bed. Huey hurried over, frantically unlocking the wheel locks. The first survivor was too thin, the hospital gown hanging loosely on them, and he didn't dare use much force when pushing, causing the bed wheel to get stuck in the floor seam, making him sweat with anxiety. Han Yu pressed his wound with one hand and opened the refrigerator with the other. Inside were 2 rows of medicine and transport wristbands, each with a number, with A, B, and C prefixes mixed together. Analytical vision swept over the remaining adhesive on the labels, and the internal codes for the Compound V project floated up. 7 people. Living proof. He shoved all the wristbands and medicine into the first aid kit the nurse had found, then removed the data card from the bedside monitor and tossed it to Huey. Pack it well. Don't bend it. Huey hurriedly reached out to catch it, almost letting the data card fall into the sheets. Okay, I've got it. Nora reported in the earpiece. 2 people in the underground security room noticed the elevator log was wrong. I fed their screens a video of a drunk causing trouble upstairs, but I can only stall for 4 minutes. The Western laundry lift can be used, but the motor is old, so it will be very loud. That's enough. Han Yu turned to look at the nurse. Are you coming with us or not? The nurse gripped the empty syringe bag in her hand, her nails digging pits into the plastic. She looked around at the people on the hospital beds, then at the lockdown sign at the door. If I leave, Vought will find me. They'll find you if you stay, too. Han Yu handed her a disposable mask. You didn't run away just now, so they're lucky. The nurse swallowed hard and put on the mask. Butcher pushed Carl's hospital bed past Han Yu, his gaze lingering on his chest for a moment. You're bringing them back, and then you're going to set rules for them. The safe house is going to turn into a powder keg. That's why I'm setting them now. Han Yu raised his foot and crushed the broken piece of bone spur on the floor, the crisp sound making Carl shrink his shoulders. Carl was strapped to the bed, his eyelids growing heavy as the sedative took effect, yet he still struggled to look at Han Yu. Will I be locked back in the box? Depends on what you choose when you wake up. I'm afraid. If you're afraid, remember that moment just now. Han Yu locked the bed rail. If you reach out to hurt an ordinary person again, I will break your other arm. Carl closed his eyes, tears sliding down his temples into his hair. Huey stood to the side, his hand gripping the bed rail slowly loosening. His gaze toward Han Yu changed. It lacked the panic of being led around by Butcher and had gained a certain indescribable weight. Han Yu, he spoke softly, if Robin saw you like this, she would probably, never mind, she'd definitely scold me first for getting involved in something like this. Han Yu snapped the first aid kit shut. She's right to scold you. Huey was stunned, then let out a bitter laugh. All right, true. The iron gate of the lift was pulled open by Butcher, and it was piled with a cart of dirty bed sheets. Nora cut into the broadcast system, and a piercing fire alarm test alert blared upstairs, drowning out the sound of the bed wheels on the second basement level. Han Yu was the last one to leave the ward. He looked back at the 7 empty beds, the bone spur embedded in the cement on the wall, and the pool of blood on the floor that had been stepped through. Nora, clear out the isolation area in the safe house. Categorize the medicine, keep the restraints, and give me individual access control permissions. Received. Nora's voice came through with a crackle of electricity, much more crisp. Also, don't tough it out with your chest. I'll stitch you up when you get back. Don't let Huey do it. He mistook chewing gum for gauze just now. Huey looked up in the lift. I heard that. Butcher pressed the upward button, and before the iron gate closed, he tilted his chin at Han Yu. Your safe house, your rules. I hope you can handle it. The lift began to ascend, the iron chains clanking loudly. A few minutes later, the green light at the western docking port lit up, and the 7 hospital beds slid into the predetermined transport route one by one. Han Yu lowered his head and pressed the blood-stained gauze tight, his other hand pressing on the first aid kit. In the gap of the kit lid, 7 transport wristbands were squeezed together, the remaining codes revealing a bit of white in the dim light. In the earpiece, Nora suddenly lowered her voice. Han Yu, there's new movement from Osborn. The monitoring value for Norman Osborn's Green Goblin serum has suddenly spiked, and the experimental logs are still automatically refreshing. Wait until you get back to check it. Get the 7 people out of the hospital first. Norman replayed the footage of Han Yu rising from the black fluid for the 17th time. On the screen, the warehouse light tubes exploded one by one, the black core residue surged along Han Yu's shoulders and back, and a golden energy spectrum pressed out from beneath his skin, as if forcibly sealing that mass of matter into his bones. The monitoring curves on the right jumped wildly, and Osborn's own analytical system displayed a row of red warnings. Unknown stabilization mechanism. High energy carrier has not collapsed. Exogenous contamination and host nerves are not in complete conflict. Norman leaned closer to the screen, his finger pressing the pause button, his fingertip turning white from the pressure. He held on. The assistant behind him swallowed hard. Mr. Osborn, that data came from fragments at the accident scene, and the contaminants haven't been fully isolated yet. The Green Goblin serum is already aggressive on its own. Mixing it with the black core residue model will double the risk. Norman didn't turn around. A low hum came from the freezer deep in the laboratory, where green serum vials were lined up in 2 rows, next to the data disk of black core fragments recovered from the peripheral warehouse. The board's signature line was blank, and the interface for Vought's joint assessment had been physically unplugged, leaving only Osborn's internal terminal running independently. Risk. Norman let out a dry, harsh laugh. The board fears Vought, Vought fears Homelander, and the media fears advertisers. Everyone keeps talking about risk, and then they wait for others to buy up their bones. The assistant took half a step forward. You could wait 24 hours, at least let the animal testing group complete the 3rd round. Shut up. The 2 short words slammed against the glass wall. The assistant's feet froze. Norman picked up the injection gun and imported the black core residue data into the serum algorithm. On the screen, the green structural chain was swallowed by black noise and then forcibly straightened. He turned off the system alarms one by one, until finally, only the blank interface of the heart rate monitor remained. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing needle marks on his arm that had not yet faded. Vought wants the Compound V project, they want my serum, and they want Osborn to become their spare parts. Norman pressed the injection gun against his vein. They won't get it. Click. Asterisk. The liquid was injected. For the first second, Norman only frowned. In the second second, his back slammed against the back of his chair, a ragged gasp escaping his throat. The heart rate monitor lit up, the numbers surging from 92 all the way to 167, his blood pressure redlining, and green vascular patterns crawling from his wrist up to his neck. The assistant lunged forward to press the emergency stop. Stop the injection. Myocardial reaction overload. Norman grabbed his wrist in a tight grip. The bone cracked. Mr. Osborn, don't touch me. Norman looked up, an eerie green tint appearing at the edges of his pupils. His hand was still shaking, yet he threw the assistant onto the console, overturning the test tube rack and shattering glass all over the floor. The monitor shrieked, and the mirrored cabinet on the wall shook open, reflecting his distorted face. The Norman in the mirror smiled first. The real Norman's lips were tightly pursed, but the reflection grinned, baring white teeth, as if another face was pressing up from behind his flesh. You're afraid. Norman stared at the mirror, his chest heaving violently. Get out. Afraid of aging, afraid of Vought swallowing your company, afraid of the board calculating shares behind your back. The reflection brought its face closer, laughing even louder. And afraid of Harry seeing you kneeling before others to sign papers. I didn't kneel. You kneel every day. Norman grabbed a metal tray and hurled it at the mirrored cabinet. The mirror cracked into a spiderweb pattern, every single shard reflecting that grinning face. Clutching his wrist, the assistant backed toward the door. Security, the private lab needs. Norman turned around. The laboratory door locked automatically, and the red light turned on. The assistant's call got caught in his throat, and in the next second, he was flipped through the air, his back slamming into the freezer, spraying coolant all over the floor. A second researcher rushed out of the cubicle, but before he could see what was happening, a green shadow bore down on him. Bang! Asterisk. A corner of the lab bench collapsed. The monitoring screen flickered twice and began to delete automatically. Norman stood amidst the shattered glass and blood, his shoulders slowly relaxing. He watched the clip of Hanyu saving Harry on the terminal, his fingertip tapping the figure wearing the damaged mask. Sentinel. From the shattered shards of the mirror, a low laugh rumbled. Bring back his data. In the safe house, Carl Pike bit down on a towel, beads of sweat rolling from his forehead to his chin. Hanyu clicked the broken arm immobilizer back into the metal slot. His left shoulder was wrapped in thick gauze, and the wound on his chest seeped a bit of red as he moved. He didn't stop. His analytical vision traced a circle along Carl's forearm bone spur, finally halting just above the elbow joint. Don't force it, the bone hardening will crack the brace. Carl squeezed the words through his teeth. I'll try. It feels like someone is twisting my bones with a screwdriver. It means the nerves are still alive. Good news. You call this good news? For bad news, I would have anesthetized you first. On the nearby isolation bed, Huey held a paper cup, sitting like a schoolboy forced to stand in the corner. Butcher leaned against the wall, puffing on an unlit cigarette, his gaze sweeping back and forth between the 7 survivors and the access control system. Nora sat in front of the main computer, headphones hanging on one side, with over a dozen windows split across her screen. Osborn logs, hospital tailing vehicles, bot surveillance hot zones, and a pulsing encrypted incoming call. She stared at the number for 2 seconds, her brow furrowing. Han Yu, anonymous line. It's routing out from Osborn's internal network, Harry's side. Han Yu had just buckled the strap on his hand. Once the call connected, rapid breathing came through first, followed by the faint crunch of stepping on shattered glass. Han Yu, can you hear me? I don't know if this number still works. I couldn't find anyone else. Harry's voice trembled, the end of his words catching in his throat. Han Yu took off his blood-stained gloves. Where are you? At home, the laboratory basement. This place is completely destroyed. Harry inhaled too sharply and choked. There are 2 people on the ground, still alive. I called the family medical team, but the surveillance is gone, all records have been deleted, and only 1 video is left. Nora had already intercepted the line into a sandbox, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Han Yu looked at the screen. What's left? The other end of the line went quiet for a beat. The footage of you saving me in the warehouse. Harry's voice dropped. Only that clip. The angle is very clean, as if someone left it on purpose, waiting for me to see it, and waiting for others to find it. Butcher took the cigarette from his mouth. Nice setup. Young master, where's your dad? Harry seemed to only just realize someone else was there, his words faltering. He's not here. Or, I don't know. I saw his coat, the serum injection gun, and blood on the floor. The alarm was turned off manually. Han Yu picked up the tablet from the table. The Osborn lab logs were still refreshing, the Green Goblin serum monitoring values glaringly bright line by line. The black core residue parameters were mixed into the formula, and the contamination curve showed a precipitous rise. A cold white prompt popped up on the hero popularity dashboard. Abnormal superpower source, Green Goblin serum and black core residue mixture. Host, Norman Osborn. Mental stability, 31% right pointing arrow 18%. Exogenous contamination activity, high. Associated event, Osborn's call for help. Han Yu tapped his knuckle against the edge of the tablet. Nora looked up. This could be a trap. Leaving the surveillance of you saving Harry is equivalent to baiting you to the Osborn lab. Vought, Osborn, that crazy old serum guy, any of them is enough trouble. Yeah, you're saying yeah. Nora took off her headphones. Your chest was just stitched up, and that burn on your shoulder from Homelander hasn't healed either. Carl's group of 7 hasn't stabilized yet, and Butcher is wandering around the room. If you go out now, the safe house loses a layer of security. Butcher tutted. I heard that. I said it specifically for you to hear. Huey raised his hand halfway and then lowered it. Harry sounds really off. I mean, he might actually be terrified. On the other end of the line, Harry lowered his voice. I know you have no obligation to deal with Osborn. But my father has the serum data you want, as well as the interface records for the Compound V project. I can open the private vault, only I can. Han Yu placed the tablet face down on the table. Don't touch the scene. Drag the injured to the ventilated area outside the door. Don't take the elevator, use the east stairs. Can you do that? The sound of rustling fabric came from Harry's side. Yes. Wait, someone tampered with the access control. The isolation door on the second basement level is open. Nora's expression changed as she pulled up the external cameras of the Osborn campus. 3 feeds were black, and the 4th only captured a distorted green afterimage at the edge of the lawn. Han Yu. She didn't finish. Han Yu had already picked up his jacket, a low-level bio field pressing a thin golden film out at his fingertips, which he quickly retracted. His chest wound rubbed against the fabric, causing his movements to pause slightly before he firmly pressed a hemostatic patch over it. Carl spat out the towel. You're going to Osborn. When that old fool threw people like me into the basement, he didn't exactly make a distress call for us. That's why I need to get his complete data, Han Yu said, sticking a spare communication patch to his collar. And bring Harry out alive. Carl stared at him, his Adam's apple bobbing, before finally cursing, fine. Rip that old fool's hard drive out while you're at it. Nora stood up, pulled a car key from the key box on the wall, and tossed it straight to him. Han Yu reached out and caught it, the key ring hitting his palm with a cold metallic touch. The car is in the back alley, the gray one. If you wreck it, you pay. Send me the bill. Do you even have money right now? She walked around to stand in front of him, reaching out to press down on the knot of the bandage on his shoulder. Blood was seeping from the spot that had just been pulled open, dampening the edge of the gauze. Nora untied the knot slightly and pressed it tight again, her movements far steadier than the irritation in her voice. Han Yu looked down as her fingertips lingered on the bandage. A beat passed. Nora pulled her hand back, her speaking speed picking up again. Don't show off. If there's black core residue in the Osborne lab, the sentinel seal inside you will be stimulated. Don't take off your earpiece. If there's no response in 5 minutes, I'll light up the entire campus security system and let them descend into chaos on their own. Don't light it all up, leave gate 3. I know. Nora glared at him. Do you need to teach me? Han Yu smiled, pulling his jacket zipper halfway up. I'll bring back the complete data for you. Cut the empty promises. She stuffed a painkiller syringe into his pocket. Just bring yourself back. Over the phone, Harry's breathing grew erratic again. Han Yu, there's a sound in the hallway. It sounds like someone is laughing. The server fans in the safe house hummed, and everyone stopped what they were doing. Han Yu gripped the car key in his palm and walked toward the back door. The access control green light lit up, the metal door swung inward, and a cold wind rushed in, blowing against the communication patch on his collar. Harry, find a place to hide. He put on his mask, his voice dropping low. I'm coming. When Starlight Annie pushed the complaint form to the middle of the table, her fingertips were still pressed against the corner of the paper. The PR director opposite her didn't pick it up. Outside the glass conference room, employees of the 7 Tower walked back and forth holding documents, while Homelander's public service announcement played on a loop on the wall. The smile in the ad was blindingly bright, but the conference room was as cold as a freezer. Starlight Annie sat up straight, the shoulder seams of her uniform crumpled by her grip, her phone pressed against the outside of her thigh, screen down. Annie, we understand your feelings. The PR director spun his pen, his tone as practiced as if he had memorized it. But internal complaints need to go through the full process. You've just joined the 7, and the public is still building their perception of you. Once this kind of thing spreads, it will hurt the team's stability. I have proof. Her voice was dry. The legal representative next to her flipped the contract to a certain page and tapped it with his fingernail. Image maintenance clause, confidentiality obligation, team collaboration clause, they're all here. Of course you can submit materials, and we will record them. But you have to think carefully. How will the media write about this? New member of the 7 accuses teammate on first day. The headlines will look very ugly. Starlight Annie's throat moved slightly. An ugly headline is more important than what he did. The smile on the PR director's face narrowed by half an inch. Don't put it so sharply. The Deep is also a member of the 7. He has brand partnerships, children's charity projects, and the Ocean Conservation Foundation. VOT will arrange an internal communication, and you can clear up the misunderstanding in a safe, controlled environment. Misunderstanding. These words slammed onto the table, silent, yet they caused veins to bulge on the back of Starlight Annie's hand. She picked up the complaint form, its edge bent by her grip, and then put it back down. The legal representative closed the folder slowly, like offering a newcomer a final way out. You can go back and rest. Today's conversation won't go into the public record. I've already submitted it. Starlight Annie stood up, the legs of her chair scraping dully against the carpet. Whether you record it or not is your business. She walked out of the conference room, her face frighteningly pale. The metal doors of the elevator reflected her shadow. That shining uniform still fit perfectly, the pauldrons, the short cape, the golden patterns, all looking meticulously edited just like in the commercials. Yet she held her phone so tightly that it took 3 fingerprint attempts to unlock it. In the deepest part of her photo gallery, inside a folder disguised as a fitness course, the anonymous surveillance file lay silently. She hadn't deleted it. VOT is starting to suppress the trending topics. In the safe house, Nora's computer screen was split into 6 sections. The trending search curves on social media platforms were being pushed down one by one, with keywords shifting from The Deep, The 7 Newcomer, and Backstage Surveillance, to Homelander Charity Gala, and A-Train Rehabilitation Program. On the other end of the call, Han Yu sat in a speeding car, his jacket unzipped slightly at the top, showing a bit of the bandage on his shoulder from his collar. The painkiller injection was still in his pocket, untouched. He continued to monitor Harry's distress call, with only intermittent breathing and the distant sound of clashing metal coming through his earpiece. They work fast. Nora hit enter. Paid trolls, complaints, platform compliance emails, they're using all three tactics at once. Give them 10 minutes, and the discussion about Starlight will be washed out into a fan squabble. Then don't let them know where the main video is. Nora glanced at the paper bag on the table, which contained the coffee and cold sandwich Han Yu had left before going out. In the car, Han Yu looked at the synchronized screen. The analytical vision emerged at the edge of his field of view, and he highlighted the timestamps of several old videos. The Deep cornering a female intern at the equipment room door backstage at some aquarium. The Deep telling dirty jokes to a female host in a promotional vehicle, while the staff awkwardly panned the camera away. The Deep grabbing a volunteer's wrist in a side corridor at a charity gala, and after she broke free, he even winked at the camera. None of it featured Starlight. Cut a teaser, Han Yu said. 15 seconds. Disgusting enough, real enough, but don't give the full context. Don't put Starlight in the title. Right, teaser of the Deep's old archives, internal review pending for the 7. Nora looked up at him. You're playing arsonist while leaving a parking spot for the fire truck. Vought likes to control the field. Let them. Fine. She dragged the media files, her keyboard clattering. A few minutes later, a new link with no profile picture was dropped into 37 small forums, to anonymous whistleblowing sites, and the chat channels commonly used by Vought employees. The teaser was only 15 seconds long. The Deep's face appeared 3 times. Each time, he smiled, thinking he looked charming. Before the first wave of reposts even reached 100, Vought's internal channel exploded first. Some posted question marks, some asked, "Is this real?" and others deleted their comments instantly. The 7 Towers PR department had just suppressed the hot keywords on the external web when internal notification pop-ups started jumping out one after another. Nora muttered, staring at the back-end data. The employee channel is even filthier than the external web. The repost speed is 3 times faster. Han Yu listened to the data report in his earpiece. Internal panic is more useful than a public trial. The Deep needs to rot in front of his own people first. In the high-level conference room of the 7 Tower, the Deep slammed his tablet onto the table. Who did this? Who leaked this? No one answered. Outside the transparent glass wall, assistants walked past with their heads down, their steps faster than usual. By the conference table, A-Train tapped his fingers on the tabletop twice, then withdrew his hand when he saw the Deep glare at him. Maeve leaned back in her chair, not having touched a drop of the water in front of her. Starlight Annie sat in a seat near the back, her phone face down on her lap, her knuckles white. Homelander stood behind the head seat, his cape draping to the floor. Having watched the 15 seconds, there was no anger on his face, only a look of disgust as if garbage had splattered onto his shoes. You are truly disgusting. The Deep opened his mouth. That was edited. They're targeting me. I can trace the anonymous source. I know people at the platforms. Shut up. Homelander looked at him. The voice wasn't loud, but the Deep's shoulders slumped. You're making Vought look like a cheap reality show. We spend so much money crafting your image as the Lord of the 7 Seas, and you repay everyone with a bunch of hallway recordings. Homelander tossed the tablet onto the table. Sit down, and don't make another sound. The Deep's face flushed red. His lips twitched a few times, but in the end, he actually sat back down. No one helped him. Even those who usually smoothed things over kept their heads down, flipping through documents. The slight breeze from the air conditioner blew across the papers on the conference table, making a rustling sound that was gratingly sharp. Starlight Annie looked up and happened to meet Maeve's gaze. Maeve didn't speak. She just spun the cup in her hand half a turn and gave her a very slight nod. The movement was so brief it was almost missed, but Starlight Annie saw it. She lowered her head, her eyelashes holding back the warmth in her eyes, her thumb rubbing the edge of her phone twice. The screen lit up. The avatar of the anonymous channel was still a blank gray space. Last time, the other party had sent a backup of the surveillance footage and a message, "Don't hand the only evidence over to Vought." She stared at the input box, deleting her message 3 times. Finally, she sent a line of text. "Why are you helping me?" In the car, Han Yu's phone vibrated. He had just unfolded the map of the outer perimeter of the Osborne campus shared by Nora. Gate 3, the cold chain passage, and the underground power well were marked in different colors. Harry hadn't spoken for the moment, with only suppressed panting heard on his end. Butcher and Huey remained in the safe house, with the occasional sound of gun cleaning and the light clinking of cups coming through the communication channel. Han Yu looked down at the message, his finger pausing on the screen. In his earpiece, Nora asked, "Starlight?" "Yeah, what did she ask?" Han Yu turned off the message preview. "A personal question." Nora scoffed. "Oh, the underground hero has a private channel." Han Yu didn't take the bait. He stared at that sentence, "Why are you helping me?" The static in his earpiece scraped against his eardrums, and the wound on his shoulder rubbed against his clothing, sending a very real jolt of pain. He recalled how, in the backstage of the Seven Tower, Starlight Annie stood in front of the mirror adjusting her uniform, her eyes still too clean to belong to someone from VOD. He remembered how, after receiving the anonymous file, she didn't immediately sell it to PR, nor did she throw the evidence at the media to gain traction. She was still trying to go through the proper channels. It was foolish, but also very rare. Han Yu typed, "Because you still act like a hero." Send. Starlight Annie sat on the innermost bench in the locker room. Outside the door crack, people whispered about the deep, the stock price, and Homelander being in a bad mood today. She stared at that line of text for a long time. The screen dimmed automatically, but she pressed it to light up again. "Because you still act like a hero." She pressed her phone to her chest, resting her forehead against the locker door. The metal locker door was cold and hard, suppressing the stinging sensation in her nose. A few seconds later, she sat up straight again, made another copy of the anonymous surveillance file, and hid it inside another encrypted app. Then she opened the internal complaint page and submitted a second set of materials. This time, the attachment field included screenshots of the link to the old video teaser, along with the time, location, and personnel present written in her own hand. In the safe house, Nora finally caught a glimpse of the end of Han Yu's reply from the shared channel. She curled her lips. "You really know how to sweet-talk a heroine." "The coffee." Han Yu's voice came through the earpiece. "The cup next to you." "The video you edited." "You saved someone too." Nora's hand paused on the keyboard, the tips of her ears quickly turning red. She grabbed the coffee, lowered her head to bite open the edge of the lid, and spoke in a stiff tone. "Cut it out. Don't get distracted. There's still a young master waiting for you to rescue over at Osborn. Also, the old video teaser has already triggered VOD's internal audit keywords. Their legal team will trace the upload chain. Let them trace it to the third layer." "I know, do you need to teach me?" Nora glared up, her fingers already switching to another proxy machine. "For the third layer, I'll hang a defunct PR email. Should I fill in the name as the Deep's assistant?" Butcher laughed from the side. "Vicious. Fill it in as outsourced public opinion monitoring," Han Yu said, adjusting the communicator near his ear in the car. "The Deep will suspect his own people first." Nora typed the final line of command, and a fake traceback diagram of the upload chain popped up on the screen. New messages in VOD's internal channel swept past like snowflakes, with the Deep's name highlighted in red, and discussions relating to members of the Seven beginning to spread. At the edge of Han Yu's field of view, a line of prompt popped up on his hero popularity value panel. Starlight Annie's trust shift, +17. The Deep's internal reputation collapse progress, 31%. VOD PR suppression cost increase. He closed the prompt and looked up at the Osborn campus sign drawing closer ahead. Nora took a sip of her coffee, frowning at the heat, yet unwilling to put it down. "Report every 5 minutes. Don't play the hero too much, Mr. Sentinel." Han Yu glanced at the internal repost curve still climbing on the synchronized screen. "Today, let's let her take back the first step." The phone vibrated again. Starlight Annie had sent a new message, only a short sentence. "I will keep submitting. I won't withdraw." Han Yu put his phone into his inner pocket. As the car cut through the cold wind, a shriek from the police channel squeezed into his communication patch first. "Abnormal channel in the 12th precinct. Suspected pumpkin bomb signal detected. The surveillance system has been implanted with the Sentinel identifier. Repeat, the identifier is being written." A second later, Harry's voice, lowered and trembling, finally came through another line. "Han Yu, that laughter is back." The evidence room of the 12th precinct collapsed first on one side. Static crackled sharply over the radio. Han Yu braked the car 2 blocks away, the windshield reflecting the rolling flames in the distance. A second explosion followed, cracking the glass into fine lines as roadside alarms wailed one after another like birds with their throats squeezed. "The evidence room is compromised." Breach in the east wall. Repeat, breach in the east wall. There are fragments of a pumpkin bomb. The surveillance playback is up. There's a black wing, and that black core monster. Han Yu pressed his fingers against the communication patch by his ear. Harry's line was filled with heavy breathing and a suppressed sob. I heard him laugh. Han Yu. My dad, he might have gone to the police station. I couldn't stop him. Stay where you are. Don't go out. But that's my dad. Which is exactly why you need to stay alive. Before hanging up, Han Yu heard Harry swear, followed by the sound of a chair being knocked over. He didn't reply. Pushing the door open, he got out of the car. From the hem of his coat, black fluid crawled out along his waist like a thin film torn from the night. The intersection was already cordoned off. Police cars, ambulances, and VOT security vehicles were crammed together, their blue and red lights sweeping across the damp, cold pavement. 2 walls of the evidence room's side wing had been blown through, scattering brick debris into the office area and sending paper documents drifting past the police tape. Several officers were carried out on stretchers, oxygen masks covering their faces, their uniforms caked in dust. The media vans arrived faster than the fire trucks. According to on-site surveillance, the suspect possesses black wings and fluid-like offensive organs, a police spokesperson said, lips pale, standing before a temporary microphone. Behind him, a VOT PR staffer held a tablet up to the camera. The danger level has been upgraded. Citizens are advised to stay away from the area and avoid contact with any black residue. On the tablet screen, a dark shadow swept through a hallway. It was cleverly edited. For only half a second, a black wing brushed past the camera, and the very next frame showed a pumpkin bomb rolling into the evidence rack. A Sentinel logo was deliberately left in the corner of the screen, as if someone was afraid the audience wouldn't get it and had forced a signature in. Shit, Nora cursed softly through the earpiece. They spliced in the footage from your warehouse. The edge noise hasn't even been cleaned up properly. VOT's tech department was really rushing this job. Han Yu looked up toward the inner side of the police cordon. Homelander had arrived. He stood before the charred, collapsed portico, his cape blown flat against his legs. Facing the cameras, he kept his head lowered, a hand resting on the shoulder of a young police officer whose eyes were red and who could barely hold his microphone steady. Homelander spoke, his voice low and heavy. Tonight, we lost loyal law enforcement officers. The attacker will pay, I promise every family. The camera flashes crackled. Han Yu stood at the back of the crowd, his cap pulled low, his knuckles turning white inside his sleeves. The black core contracted along his forearm, but he forced it back under his skin. Rushing out now would play right into their hands. The police channel was already broadcasting updated wanted alerts, and VOT News had begun pushing the keyword, Black Core Monster Attacks Police. In the crowd of onlookers, some covered their mouths and wept, some cursed while holding up their phones, and others pointed their cameras at every dark shadow. Han Yu, Nora's typing was rapid. Don't try to steal the spotlight. Every camera here has been taken over by VOT. They're waiting for you to show your face. I know. He slipped into a nearby apartment building undergoing renovation. The stairwell smelled strongly of cement, the plaster was peeling, and the emergency lights flickered. Han Yu made his way to the 5th floor and pushed open a window leading to the exterior scaffolding. Black fluid flowed from his shoulders and back, clinging to the crevices in the brickwork. Cold, the deep, freezing sensation of the void's dark side projection pollution ground outward from his chest, like ice nails driving into his bones. Han Yu's teeth chattered slightly. He immediately suppressed his sentry energy spectrum to low power, and the analytical vision expanded in his field of view. The temporary police command vehicle was parked on the west side of the station. It had bulletproof glass, VOT security patrolled in groups of 4, and the communication antenna on the roof was relaying the police channel. Inside, there were 6 heat signatures, one of which was blindingly bright, its mental stability reading bordered in a glaring red on the panel. Target: Homelander. Mental stability: fluctuating. Aggression level: medium-high. Han Yu spread the black core into a thin layer and slid down the exterior wall of the apartment building. It didn't extend any tentacles or spread its black wings, it merely became a shadow flattened by the lights against the brickwork, inching closer to the command vehicle along the drainpipes, the backs of billboards, and the gaps between air conditioning units. Patience. Ashley's voice drifted from inside the command vehicle, slightly muffled by the walls. We've already sent the surveillance footage to 3 partner media outlets, and the police will synchronize the wanted poster. The problem lies with Osborn. Norman's signs of losing control are too obvious, and the pumpkin bomb model is way too Osborn. Another man lowered his voice. The evidence room contained leftover parts from the Osborn warehouse, as well as backups related to the adult project. Blowing it up works in our favor, but if Norman is caught, it'll expose the trade chain. Homelander chuckled. The laugh was brief, like a blade tapping the rim of a glass. Then make him the victim. The vehicle fell silent for a beat. Homelander's boot heels clicked against the metal floor as he took 2 slow steps. Norman Osborn, the great entrepreneur, contaminated, threatened, and driven to a breakdown by the Black Core monster. He attacked the police station tonight. No, he was driven mad by that thing called Han Yu. Aren't you guys the experts at writing these kinds of stories? Han Yu's dark shadow, clinging to the outside of the vehicle, froze. The recording waveform fluctuated on the communication interface. Nora made no sound on her end, save for the rising hum of her computer fan. Ashley swallowed hard. Homelander, this involves police casualties. It'll be very hard to control the families. Casualties. Homelander's tone rose, carrying a chilling lightheartedness. I just saw a few stretchers in front of the cameras. Too few. The public needs to be afraid. Afraid enough to want to believe in me, to want Vought to take over all superhuman incident management. 5, 10, the effect would be much better. Sir, don't look at me with that face. Homelander's voice turned cold. They wear the uniform, they draw a salary. Dying in front of the cameras means society will remember them for 3 days. Then I catch the monster, and everyone cheers. It's clean. Snap. Han Yu pressed his fingernails into his palm. The black core bulged into a fine spike on the wall before he pressed it flat again. The veins on the back of his hand throbbed violently, and a gold energy spectrum flashed near his wrist bone. Nora finally spoke, her voice cold. Recorded. Got it all. Han Yu didn't answer. Inside the command vehicle, the PR staff had already begun discussing headlines, how to stage the evidence room debris for photos, and the order of interviews with the office's families. Homelander leaned against the desk, listening for half a minute, before complaining that their wording was too soft. Monster. He tapped the desk. Don't call him a suspect. Call him the Black Core monster. The public won't remember A19, and they don't care about Han Yu. They just need a name I can tear to shreds. Fine, monster, Ashley corrected herself quickly. The wanted level has been raised to maximum. We'll advise citizens to seek shelter, and all black fluid samples will be handled by the Vought Hazard Control Group. And that girl, Homelander suddenly mentioned. Starlight, is she fussing over that appeal again today? The sound of Ashley rustling through papers came through. I'll have the PR department keep her quiet. Han Yu lowered his eyelids. Nora immediately chimed in, don't let them bait you. If we expose this now, Vought's tech department will insist the audio is forged, and they can use the fact that you got close to the command vehicle to countersway you for attacking the on-site command system. You need an original chain, timestamps, and third-party backups. Split it into 3. Already cutting it, Nora's typing was as fast as rain. I'll keep 1 copy on an offline drive, and send 1 to Huey so he can process it through a civil witness chain. The 3rd copy will be linked to an automatic delayed account. If there's no biometric confirmation from you in 12 hours, it'll be packaged and sent to 2 small stations that don't take Vought advertising. Han Yu ejected the micro recorder from his sleeve, and the black core wrapped around it, pressing it against a gap in the vehicle's body to continue recording the low-frequency vibrations inside. Don't link the 3rd copy to any personal terminal. Understood. The delayed account only accepts the raw package and verification codes, it won't touch any contact lists. Don't contact Harry for now, Han Yu paused. He knows too much. It will only get him targeted by both Vought and Osborn at the same time. Now you're talking sense. A chime from Norris N signaled the completion of the file encryption. Raw audio slicing complete. Command vehicle body vibration pattern verification complete. Backup nodes. Nora Weir, Huey, delayed account. The hero popularity dashboard flashed at the edge of his vision. Vought framing evidence chain. Added key quotes. Wanted danger level. Upgraded. Public counterattack window. Premature. Han Yu stared at the last line, pressing his tongue against his back teeth. He could flip the command vehicle right now. A low-level bio field wouldn't hold Homelander off for long, and the black core could be burned through by heat vision, but he could at least shut up the few people inside. However, the cameras outside would record him attacking the police command center, saving Vought the trouble of editing. Han Yu, unclench your hand, Nora said suddenly. He looked down. His palm had been pierced by his nails, and the droplets of blood were absorbed by the black core, causing fine ripples to run across the fluid surface. I'm fine. Bullshit. Every time you say that, you're about to do something crazy. Han Yu let out a breath. Just as he was about to withdraw the black core from beneath the vehicle, Homelander's voice inside stopped. There was a very soft sound. The scraping of a chair leg against the floor. The hairs on the back of Han Yu's neck stood on end. The analytical vision flared frantically, and the entire wall of the vehicle turned into a red warning in his field of view. The angle of Homelander turning his head, the speed at which the heat source in his eyes gathered, and the tiny changes in the reflection on the window were marked one by one on the panel. He was looking over. There's something outside the wall. Homelander's voice drifted through the vehicle's side. Like a rat. Ashley gasped. Security. Before she could finish, and without even opening the door, red light stabbed directly out from inside the window. The heat vision burned through the bulletproof glass, slicing horizontally across the outer wall of the command vehicle. In the last half-second, Han Yu deactivated his mimicry, and the black core tore away from the wall, sliding down the drain. The red light swept over his previous position, melting 2 charred lines into the back of the billboard. It hurt. A small fragment of black tissue hadn't been retracted in time and was roasted to ash by the edge of the heat vision, stuck in the crevices of the wall. Han Yu's left shoulder went numb, as if someone were driving a red-hot needle into the vicinity of an old wound. Heat vision edge energy capture. Analysis progress 2.1%. Ignoring the prompt, he flipped down into the alley behind the apartment building. When the black core retracted beneath his skin, it was missing a corner, its edges still smoking. In the distance, Vought security was already rushing toward him, their weapon lights sweeping wildly. Nora kept her voice down. Retreat. They've locked down the West Alley entrance. Is the recording complete? Complete. All 3 copies are out. Huey just replied with a question mark. He's probably scared out of his mind. Han Yu dashed along the base of the wall, the analytical vision plotting a route between trash cans, fire escapes, and surveillance blind spots. Instead of fleeing far away, he looped back to the rear flank of the police station, stopping in the shadow of a low building. A commotion broke out in the media area ahead. Homelander stepped out of the command vehicle, his face once again wearing a look of solemn grief as he raised his hand to gesture for the citizens to remain calm. Ashley kept her head down, typing frantically on her phone, and new push notifications quickly filled the screens along the street. Black core monster suspected of approaching the scene again. Vought reminder. Please cooperate with the superhuman hazard cordon. Han Yu tore off his charred cuff, revealing the black patterns on the back of his hand that had not yet faded. The recording file sat quietly on the phone in his inner pocket, its triple encryption icons turning green one by one. Get the real evidence first. He pressed his earpiece, his voice slightly hoarse. Then we fight them head on. Norris End fell silent for half a second. You finally sound like someone who's going to live to see tomorrow. Don't praise me too soon. Above the police station, there was only the roar of news helicopters and evacuation orders repeatedly blaring from megaphones. The crowd outside the cordon was pushed back by Vought security. The screens along the street continued to loop the spliced black wing footage, and panic spread outward like a rising tide. Han Yu looked up. The black core emerged from between his fingers again, pressing flat against the back of his hand as a quiet shadow. He pressed the confirmation key for the 3 recording backups. Nora, confirm that the 3 backups remain independent. Just as the confirmation button lit up green, a strange laugh echoed from above the collapsed opening on the east side of the police station. Han Yu looked up. A green glider dived down along the shadow of the building, its exhaust scraping against the shattered window frame and kicking up a large shower of glass shards. The Green Goblin stood atop the glider, his cloak whipping wildly in the airflow, the pumpkin bomb in his hand already glowing with an orange-red countdown. Directly below was the evacuation crowd. 2 police officers supported a colleague wearing an oxygen mask, paramedics dragged a stretcher back, media reporters crouched by the police cars looking for angles, and the crowd outside the barricade was still being pushed back by Vought security. Look, the Green Goblin's voice boomed from his helmet's loudspeaker, are you afraid of me? The real monster is down there. Han Yu, Sentinel, Black Core monster. The bomb left his hand. Get down. Someone's voice cracked as they screamed. The bricks beneath Han Yu's feet cracked. He launched himself from the shadow of the low building, his baseball cap blown away by the wind, and the charred sleeve of his left shoulder trailed a streak of black ash in the air. The black core surged from the back of his hand, compressing into 3 thick black tentacles that coiled up to meet the pumpkin bomb. The orange-red point of light was already close to the heads of the crowd. There was no time to throw it away. Han Yu clenched his fingers, and the black core tentacles wrapped the bomb into a bulging black sphere. A low-level bio-field coated the outer layer, a golden film flashing and vanishing between the black gaps. Boom! The explosion was locked in midair. The black sphere swelled violently, fire churning inside like a sun being choked. The impact leaked only a single ring, ripping off the doors of 2 police cars and sending shattered glass clattering down, yet it didn't touch the evacuating crowd. Scorched holes were burned into the black core shell, and Han Yu's arm shuddered in response. It hurt. He grit his teeth, forcing the fire back down. The black fluid closed in layer by layer, swallowing the orange-red flames inside until only a few wisps of black smoke drifted out from the gaps between the tentacles. The street fell silent for a beat. The searchlight of a news helicopter locked onto him, and over a dozen cameras turned in unison. A reporter held up a microphone, mouth agape, unable to squeeze out a single word. The man who had just been shouting, "Black Core Monster," was now kneeling on the ground, clutching his child, his phone still live streaming as comments flooded the screen too fast to read. He saved people. Vought said he blew up the police station. Then who threw that bomb just now? The muzzles of Vought security's guns raised, only to freeze halfway. Several police officers were also stunned, their fingers on the triggers but their barrels pointing toward the ground. Han Yu didn't explain. He landed next to an overturned police car. His black core tentacles retracted halfway, wrapping around the waists of 2 police officers knocked down by the impact, dragging them behind an ambulance. One officer's forehead was covered in blood, his hand still gripping his sidearm. "Don't move." Han Yu pressed his hand back to his chest. "Paramedic. Over here." The paramedic finally snapped out of it, rushing over with the stretcher. Han Yu set the second officer down. The black core at his fingertips swept over the steel shard in the officer's calf, and analytical marking lines mapped out the positions of the blood vessels. He didn't pull it out, only pulling over a torn tourniquet nearby to tie it off. The paramedic looked at his hand, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Wire. Save him first." Han Yu turned around. The Green Goblin had already circled around the roof of the police station, his glider carving a sharp turn to dive again. The edges of the blade wings scraped against an antenna, sending sparks exploding all the way. "Beautiful." The Green Goblin clapped his hands, his laughter shrill. "How touching. Once a monster puts on the skin of a hero, everyone forgets what he looks like when he eats people." Han Yu's pupils contracted. Norris keyboard typing became erratic in the earpiece. "Han Yu, the live broadcast is fully active. Don't let him control the narrative." The Green Goblin lowered his flight altitude, his pumpkin-shaped helmet catching the searchlight beam as a raspy laugh squeezed through his metal teeth. "You enjoy it, don't you? That power seeping into your bones, telling you that you can tear everyone apart, make them shut up, make them kneel." "Fine." Dense spikes sprouted on the surface of the black core. The wound on his left shoulder, grazed by Homelander's heat vision, began to burn again, but deep in his chest, it felt heavy and cold. The whispers of the void crawled up along his nerves. "Kill him. Tear open the metal plating. Make the laughter stop." Han Yu's fingers twitched, and the black core tentacles rose, their tips pointing directly at the Green Goblin's neck. Several nearby reporters instinctively backed away, but their lenses didn't turn away. "Han Yu," Nora roared in the earpiece. "Look at the ground." He lowered his gaze. Behind the ambulance, the hand of the officer from earlier still gripped the edge of the stretcher, blood dripping onto the white sheet. A little girl was cradled in her mother's arms, her face buried in a coat, leaving only one eye to peek at him. The spikes on the back of Han Yu's hand retracted one by one. "Nora, give me his trajectory." Wind reflecting off the tall building on the left, glider tilt angle 32 degrees to the right. "Next time he'll slice at your knees. Are you listening to me?" "I hear you." Han Yu pressed the black core back beneath his skin, leaving only a thin layer of armor on the outside of his arm. Analytical vision expanded across the street, marking the lampposts, police car roofs, and the edges of broken walls. The Green Goblin's laughter stopped. "What, afraid of the cameras?" Han Yu's toes crushed the glass as he lunged forward. In the first prediction, the Green Goblin swept over the police car on the left, his blade wings slicing horizontally. Han Yu crouched and slid past the car door. The blade wing shaved off the police car's side mirror right behind him, metal fragments flying past his ear. The second time, the glider looped back from above, its tail thrusters suddenly accelerating. Han Yu stepped on a fallen road sign, using the leverage to flip behind a fire hydrant. The blade wing struck the road sign, slicing the entire board in half. "SS's, missed by half an inch," Nora said, her voice tight. "That's enough." The third time, Han Yu did not retreat. Analytical marking lines lit up on the underbelly of the glider, and the red dot indicating a brief thruster imbalance jumped into his field of vision. The Green Goblin raised his hand as he dived, another pumpkin bomb just emerging from the magazine at his waist. Han Yu rushed toward a lamppost, his right foot stepping onto the curved pole as the black core emerged from his ankle to secure his footing. Using the rebound of the pole, he leapt up, his shoulder forcing its way through the wind pressure of the glider, his fist wrapped in a golden energy spectrum as he smashed it toward the Green Goblin's helmet. Thud! One side of the helmet caved in, and the green visor shattered. The glider veered out of control, snapping a section of the fire escape on the police station's outer wall, then scraping past the top of a news van. The Green Goblin flipped and stabilized himself. The left side of his helmet cracked open, revealing Norman Osborn's face. One half of that face was shrouded in metallic shadow, while the other was exposed under the searchlight. His eyes were bloodshot, and a smile still hung on the corner of his mouth, but there was a brief beat of bewilderment in his gaze. "Han." Norman's lips twitched. The next second, madness reclaimed his expression. "You ruined my experiment." Han Yu landed, the soles of his shoes dragging two white marks on the asphalt road. The wound on his left shoulder was jarred open, scorched smoke rising from the damaged part of the black core. He raised his hand to press down on it, the old wound in his palm throbbing with a numb ache. A cracked shout came from outside the barricade. "Dad!" Han Yu turned his head. Harry was held back behind the barricade by two VOT security guards, one of his coat buttons fastened incorrectly, his face frighteningly pale. Seeing Norman's cracked helmet and the churning black core on Han Yu's arm, he lunged forward. "Han Yu, don't kill him. Please, don't." Han Yu's movements paused for half a beat. In that half beat, the Green Goblin's glider scraped along the ground from the rear flank, its blade wing slicing past Han Yu's calf. Han Yu retreated, his pant leg cut open and a piece of his black core armor shaved off. The Green Goblin seized the opportunity to pull up. Beneath the cracked helmet, Norman's blood-red eye stared at Harry, the corner of his mouth twitching. Harry struggled as the guards held his shoulders. "He's my father. Han Yu, listen to me, he's sick, he's really sick." The surrounding lenses all turned toward them. Someone among VOT security whispered an urge, "Get it on camera. Make sure you get a clear shot of young Master Osborn." Han Yu heard it, and he also heard Harry's ragged breathing. He raised his hand, the black core once again covering his knuckles, as his gaze shifted from Harry's face back to the Green Goblin in midair. The Green Goblin hovered in the searchlight atop his glider, his cracked helmet reflecting blinding shards of light like a torn open smiley face. "See." The Green Goblin spread his hands. "Even he knows you want to kill me." Han Yu didn't answer. Nora lowered her voice in the earpiece. "Han Yu, don't stop. He's looking for his next angle." Han Yu crushed the piece of black core debris that had been sliced off at his feet, and analytical vision crawled back onto the bottom of the glider. Outside the barricade, Harry's shouts trembled, torn apart by the wailing sirens and the roaring helicopter. "Han Yu, don't touch my dad." The Green Goblin leaned forward, the glider's exhaust flare lighting up once more. Han Yu clenched his fist, the black core quietly tightening against the back of his hand as the searchlights cast their long shadows across the glass-strewn ground. The moment the glider's tail flame ignited, the broken glass at Han Yu's feet was pushed away in a circle by the blast. Analytical vision crawled through the air, tracing two arcs along the bottom of the glider, one grazing Han Yu's left shoulder, the other wrapping behind him before turning toward the cordon line. At the end of that return line, Harry was still being held down by two VOT security agents, half his body already pushed past the yellow and black caution tape. "Get down." By the time Han Yu roared, the Green Goblin had already lowered his body. Inside the cracked helmet, half of Norman's face was covered in blood, while the other half was obscured by the green mask. The mouth beneath the gap in the mask was stretched wide. The glider swept in low over the wreckage of a police car, its blade wings cutting a trail of sparks from the car door. Han Yu could have dodged to the left. Analytical vision gave him the cleanest route, 3 steps to avoid the blade wings, and his black core tentacles could latch onto the tail fin as the glider passed. But Harry was standing right there. The glider would hit the bent lamppost and then bounce into the crowd behind the cordon line. Harry was the closest, and the VOT security agent pinning his shoulder was effectively nailing him to the spot. Han Yu twisted his body, the black core exploding behind him into 2 short wings, and he threw himself sideways. He shoved Harry out of the way first. The 2 VOT security agents tumbled behind the caution tape, men and guns alike. Harry was struck in the chest by Han Yu's shoulder, stumbling and rolling to the side of a news van. The camera tripod was knocked over. The reporter cursed half a sentence while hugging the equipment, then was forced to duck as the heat wave from the passing glider washed over him. The blade wing caught Han Yu's flank. SZZZT. The black core armor was sliced open, fabric and flesh peeling back together. Before any blood could flow out, black fluid surged from the edges of the wound like molten asphalt, forcibly sealing the gash. Han Yu's knee hit the ground, his palm pressing into the broken glass, the old wound numbed by the shards. Nora was shouting rapidly in his earpiece, "Are you crazy? That hit was aimed at your waist. Han Yu, listen to me, stop taking hits for Osborn." "Shut up for 2 seconds." Han Yu pushed himself up. Outside the cordon line, Harry coughed, doubled over, his face covered in dust when he looked up. His first glance went to Han Yu's flank, his second to find Norman in the air. "Dad, stop, please, stop." The glider performed a tight turn in midair, and the Green Goblin's body swayed. Inside the broken mask, that blood-red eye trembled, and the smile at the corner of his mouth froze. "Ha, Harry." The voice had changed. It was short, hoarse, as if scraped from his lungs. Harry shoved the VOT security agent beside him, his fingers gripping the caution tape until his knuckles turned white. "Dad, I'm here. Look at me. Stop fighting. Let's go home, let's." "Home." A laugh squeezed out of Norman's throat, then seemed to be choked off by something. He raised a hand to press against the crack in his helmet, veins bulging on the back of his hand. "Harry, leave here, get away." Before he could finish, his neck jerked to the side. The muscles beneath the green mask twitched, and his gaze twisted back into sharp malice. A second pumpkin bomb popped out from the bottom of the glider, the orange countdown flashing once before the Green Goblin kicked it back into the rack. He wanted to keep it. "Good son." The Green Goblin looked down at Harry, his voice sharp and airy. "Look closely, he will tear you apart too." "Norman." Han Yu straightened up, the black core tightening along the wound on his flank, making his teeth clench in pain. "If you can still hear me, bring the glider down." "Are you ordering me?" The Green Goblin laughed and pressed his wrist down. The glider reacted as if whipped, its tail flame spewing blue-white fire as it banked along the wreckage of a fire escape. Analytical vision exploded with dense warnings. The glider's path was pointed straight at Han Yu's chest, but the angle of the blade wing was off by half an inch. That half inch would have grazed the neck of the paramedic behind him. Han Yu did not retreat. Black core tentacles erupted from his left arm, first sweeping the nearest paramedic and stretcher back, then another tentacle wrapped around a fallen street sign and smashed it into the glider's flank. Clang! The street sign was sliced into 2 pieces by the blade wing, and the glider's speed slowed by only a beat. That was enough. Han Yu charged toward the glider, gripping the pointed nose with both hands. The metal casing was hot enough to make his palms smoke, and his old wound reopened. The black core crawled up through his fingers, turning into bundles of thin, long tentacles that drilled into the air intake and wrapped around the engine blades. The glider was still pushing him, sliding backward. His soles ground against the ground, the broken glass leaving 2 white streaks behind his feet. Han Yu's back slammed into the overturned police car, the chassis denting, and the siren let out a short, sharp wail. "Han Yu." Harry scrambled up, his voice cracking. "Don't hurt him." The Green Goblin stood on the glider, leaning forward, a short blade popping out of his hand as he stabbed down toward the back of Han Yu's neck. Han Yu looked up. The black core erected a thin shield on his shoulder, and the short blade sank halfway into it. The Green Goblin couldn't pull his hand back, his face, beneath the broken helmet, pressed close to Han Yu's, blood dripping onto the black core and making a faint hissing sound. "Monster, you get tired too, huh?" "Yeah." Han Yu raised his right fist. The first punch smashed into the glider's front control cabin. The metal plate collapsed, and 2 rows of red indicator lights inside went dark. The glider plummeted sharply, its blade wings scraping across the police car's hood, sparks splashing in front of a camera lens. A man holding a child was still holding up his phone, the scrolling barrage of comments blocking half the screen. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. The second punch landed. The casing of the control module shattered, and a few cables sparking with blue fire whipped out. Black core tentacles drilled inside and ripped the cables apart. The glider's tail flame stuttered, and its hovering height dropped to Han Yu's knees. The Green Goblin shrieked, "No! How dare you touch my creation!" His other hand pressed toward his waist, where the manual detonator for the pumpkin bomb was located. Han Yu's third punch smashed through the core board. Crack! The entire front end of the glider split open, the green coating shattering into fragments. The engine's sound turned into a piercing, hollow whine, and the blade wings twitched left and right like a beast with severed nerves. Han Yu had intended to press it to a stop. The stopping point indicated by analytical vision was right beneath his feet. The black core had already wrapped around the engine, and the low-level biofield had attached to the glider's undercarriage. If he pressed down just another half foot, it would have been jammed into the wreckage of the police car. But the Green Goblin laughed. Final command. He tapped his temple with a bloody finger. The glider wreckage jerked backward as if yanked by an invisible hook. Han Yu's arm sank with the pull, and the wound on his flank, which had been sealed, tore open again, the black core spraying a ring of black mist. He gripped the front end, but only tore off a fragment containing a data interface. "Dad!" Harry's cry pierced through all the noise. The glider spun in reverse, and the broken front spike and blade wings plunged into Norman's chest together. The sound was dull. The Green Goblin's laugh stuck in his throat. He looked down at the metal tip protruding from his chest, and the blood-red eye beneath the broken helmet faded in color. The glider dragged him, crashing into a section of fire escape, then slammed onto the street, sliding 5 or 6 meters before coming to a stop. The sirens were still wailing. No one opened fire. Harry scrambled over, his knees kneeling into the glass, his hands clutching Norman's shoulders. Half the green mask had fallen off, revealing Norman's graying face. "Dad, Dad, look at me, don't sleep, don't sleep." "Paramedics. Doctor, what are you standing there for?" A paramedic rushed forward a few steps with a first aid kit, only to be blocked by Han Yu's hand. Han Yu's fingertips hovered above Norman's chest, analytical vision scanning the wound, the heart, and the serum reaction zone. Cold white markers popped up layer by layer. Myocardial rupture, serum reaction runaway, black core contamination backflow. Irreversible. These 4 terms were nailed into his vision, so clean that it made one feel cold. Han Yu's fingers tightened, the black core trying to reach toward Norman's chest to seal the bleeding points. Harry slapped his hand away, his voice trembling, but his eyes glaring fixedly at him. "Don't touch him." Han Yu stopped. "Harry, I can seal the external wounds, but his heart." "I said don't touch him." Harry clutched Norman tighter, blood smearing his cuffs. "You smashed his glider just now. You hit it back. Everyone saw it." That was the Green Goblin's return command. Nora lowered her voice, anxious in the earpiece. "Han Yu, there's footage of the scene. Export the analytical vision recording, explain it quickly." Han Yu looked around. Lenses, searchlights, the muzzles of Vought security guns, the cameras hanging from news helicopters, and mouths agape outside the cordon line. The security agent who had urged people to film Harry earlier was already pressing his communicator to his lips, his voice very low. "We've got the footage. Focus on Han Yu punching and Osborn falling, don't release the earlier part yet." Han Yu heard him. He also heard Harry, pressed against Norman's ear, calling, "Dad," over and over. Norman's fingers twitched, grabbing Harry's cuff. His lips moved, but he couldn't utter a complete word. The red light inside the Green Goblin mask died completely. Black smoke poured from the tail of the glider. The second pumpkin bomb remained stuck in the rack, its countdown screen shattered, no longer ticking. Han Yu crouched down, retrieved the fragment with the data interface from the glider's cracked control cabin, and used the black core to scoop up the serum core storage chip that had fallen from Norman's waist. His movements were slow, enough for all the cameras to clearly capture that he did not touch Norman's body. Harry looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "You're still taking his things. These can trace who gave him the black core plan. Get out." Harry bit out the word heavily, his voice raspy as if filled with the stench of blood. Han Yu tucked the fragment into his palm, wrapped in the black core. The wound on his flank was still emitting black smoke. He glanced at Harry, didn't reach out again, and didn't offer any more explanations. Nora paused for a half-beat in the earpiece. Han Yu, Vought will edit this. I know. Then why are you still leaving? Han Yu turned around. Black core tentacles curled up a scorched fragment of a pumpkin bomb shell from the ground and tightened it along with the serum core data. In the distance, the Vought security guns raised a few more inches, and the cameras followed his retreating figure. Harry knelt by the glider wreckage, clutching Norman, his shoulders shaking violently. Han Yu stepped over the collapsed caution tape, his voice low enough that only the earpiece could pick it up. Check the source first. Norman Osborn's casket rested in the atrium on the first floor of the Osborn building. White flowers carpeted the steps from the entrance, and the silver Osborn logo was embedded on the flower stands. The television camera swept down along the logo, capturing the words on the black funeral scroll: Entrepreneur Norman Osborn, killed in an attack by an unknown black core monster. Han Yu stood in the shadows behind the second-floor fire door, a makeshift pressure bandage wrapped around his flank. Residue of the black core clung to the edges of the wound like charred glue, twitching from time to time. It was annoyingly painful. Downstairs, Harry stood before the casket in a black suit. His tie was slightly crooked, and his eyes were heavily bloodshot. He had been standing there for nearly 2 hours, unresponsive to anyone who came to shake his hand, until a Vought representative approached from the side and held out a tablet. Mr. Osborn, there are some things you should see for yourself. Harry did not take it. The Vought representative lowered his voice, his expression carefully composed. This is unreleased footage from the scene. The police are still verifying it, and we were worried you might see a second-hand edited version on the news. Nora's hushed cursing came through Han Yu's earpiece. They really have the nerve to pull this at a funeral. Of course they do. I'm hacking into their tablet now. Don't, Han Yu said, pressing his finger against the comms patch. The tablet is just bait. The moment you touch it, Vought will claim external interference to manipulate the grieving family. The sound of typing on Nora's end paused for a beat. You sound very calm. Han Yu watched as Harry finally reached out to take the tablet, his knuckles pressing against the black bezel as if to crush the screen. I want to smash that thing into his face. The screen lit up. The video didn't start with the police station explosion, nor Norman in his Green Goblin armor sweeping over the evacuating crowd, nor the pumpkin bomb rolling toward the people, nor the Vought security line. We've got the footage. The footage started with Han Yu's black wing unfurling. The camera shook violently, the black core spread out behind him, and the news helicopter's spotlight shone down, the editing compressing him into a blotch of dirty shadow. The next segment showed a fist shattering the Green Goblin helmet. The segment after that showed the glider wreckage spinning in reverse, the broken spike piercing Norman's chest. Blood sprayed across the edge of the lens. The video paused on the frame where Norman fell. Harry's face was reflected on the screen, ghastly pale, his eye sockets bruised. When he looked up, his gaze pierced through the crowd, the wreaths, the cameras, and the bodyguards' shoulders, nailing itself onto the second-floor fire door. Han Yu did not hide. The two of them locked eyes across the entire atrium. Harry's lips moved, but no sound came out. Veins bulged on the back of his hand gripping the tablet, and a faint sound came from the corner of the screen as the glass cracked into a spiderweb pattern. Han Yu, Nora's voice was strained with urgency. Go down there now and let him hear the recording. The part where the Green Goblin attacked the police station, the part where Vought framed you, I can transfer it all to his phone. Can you stop standing there like a mute? Han Yu shifted his gaze away from Harry and onto the two Vought security personnel at the edge of the atrium. One had a silver earpiece behind his ear, while the other was adjusting the camera on his chest toward Harry. Nora, what's the cleanup status of the Compound V experimental line? You're asking about this now. You should first. Status. Heavy breathing came through the earpiece as Nora clattered away at her keyboard. 2 of the 3 sealed storage points at the Osborn Remnant warehouse have been cleared. The cold chain fleet in the hospital basement disappeared half an hour ago. The internal Vought temp work order lists it as biological contamination disposal, with the final sign-off window set for 6 a.m. tomorrow. Han Yu tugged at his jacket, pulling the black core fragments tighter against him. Incinerator. The records say the Medical Waste Treatment Center. The actual location hasn't been locked down yet. Nora's voice dropped. They are moving living people. In your head. Nora stifled her anger. If you keep dragging things out with Harry, he's going to be used as a weapon by Vought. You saved him, but right now, he looks at you like you're the man who killed his father. Downstairs, the priest's eulogy echoed, the words flattened by the amplification equipment. The camera swept over the casket, over Harry, and then over the neatly arranged white flowers. The Vought representative stood half a step away, waiting patiently. Han Yu's fingers paused on the fire door handle. He knew what he could do if he went down there now. He could release the raw footage of the Green Goblin attacking the police station, play the Vought security recording for everyone to hear, and project the analysis of the glider's return trajectory onto the big screen. Harry would hate him a little less, the media would explode, Vought would change their story on the spot, and the Compound V project team would get enough time to stuff the remaining people into vehicles, warehouses, and incinerator lists. Innocence is expensive. Living people are more expensive. Find the survivors first, Han Yu said in a low voice. I'll settle the score with Harry later. You are really, Nora bit off the second half of her sentence, only cursing after 2 seconds, stupid as hell. Han Yu didn't respond. On the right side of the atrium, a shoulder-mounted camera suddenly turned toward the second-floor fire door, and the lens light flashed. Just as Han Yu was about to retreat, a dark cape in the crowd downstairs shifted half a step. Maeve stood by the flower stand, holding a bouquet of white roses. She didn't look up, just turned to chat with an Osborn board member nearby. Her cape blocked the camera's angle as she moved. The cameraman frowned and moved to the side, but she placed the flowers in front of the casket, her shoulder perfectly blocking the line of sight between the lens and the second-floor shadows. The movement was very natural. Even the Vought representative didn't turn around. Han Yu saw it. He raised his hand and pressed 2 fingers against his brow bone, the gesture so slight that only Maeve could catch it. Maeve straightened the bouquet, pressing her fingers against the white rose ribbon. She didn't respond, but as she turned, she hooked a ground cable with the tip of her high heel. The cameraman almost tripped and cursed. Hey, watch it. Sorry, Maeve said, her tone cold and devoid of warmth. Dropping equipment at a funeral makes for a very ugly news headline. Nora's suspicious voice came through Han Yu's earpiece. Was that Maeve? She's helping you. She's helping herself, Han Yu said, watching as Maeve retreated to the edge of the crowd, putting some distance between herself and the Vought representative. And she's helping the people who didn't die on that flight. Nora was silent for half a second. What's the situation between you two now? The situation where we can stab each other a little less. Sounds more reliable than Butcher. After the eulogy, the guests stepped forward one by one to offer flowers. Harry didn't cry. He just held the tablet against his chest, the cracked screen pressed against his black suit, and he didn't let go even as the glass edge cut a red mark into his palm. The Vought representative waited until the crowd dispersed a bit before handing him a business card. Mr. Osborn, Vought is willing to provide independent investigation resources. The Black Core monster is dangerous. It has attacked the 7 Tower, interfered with law enforcement scenes, and now it has appeared at your father's death scene. You need a professional team. Harry kept his eyes lowered and didn't look at the card. The representative continued in a lowered voice, the research assets your father left behind also need protection. Police procedures are slow, and the media only cares about blood. We can help you find him. Find who? Han Yu, the representative said the name clearly. Or the thing behind him. Harry finally turned his head. His eyes were dry and red, and only the reflection of the screen remained in his pupils. He didn't reach for the card, and the Vought representative didn't take it back. You were at the scene yesterday, too, Harry said, his voice raspy. Your people held me down and wouldn't let me go over. The expression on the representative's face froze for a moment before quickly recovering. The scene was chaotic. Security's priority was to protect you. Protect me while I watched him die. When these words came out, the 2 Osborn executives nearby shut their mouths. The Vought representative placed the business card on the flower stand next to the casket. Anger needs a direction. When you're ready, call me. Harry didn't agree, but he didn't throw the business card away either. Han Yu watched this scene, the black core tightening within his cuffs, a chill creeping up his forearm. A line of gray text popped up on the edge of his vision on the hero popularity value panel. Osborn Air Hostility Lock, rising. Vought PR Edit Impact, spreading. Compound V Experimental Survivor Transfer Window, remaining 9 hours 17 minutes and 44 seconds. The numbers were glaring. Han Yu raised his hand to close the overlay and turned to push open the fire door. The door hinge made a very faint sound, covered by the sound of the organ downstairs. The rustling sound of Nora flipping through files came through. I'll keep tracking the cold chain fleet. There's a strange shell company for parties in the Osborne financial remnants, I haven't matched the name yet. Give me some time. How long? Don't rush me, I don't have 8 hands. I'll give you the coordinates by tonight, or at least the door. Han Yu walked down the emergency stairs. The bandage on his flank was pulled, and blood seeped out a little more. He pressed his palm against it, the black core fluid covering the wound with a faint, searing sound. In the atrium downstairs, Harry stood before the casket again. He picked up the business card, looked at it for 3 seconds, and stuffed it into his inner suit pocket. Then, he pressed the cracked tablet against his chest and looked up toward the second-floor fire door. It was already empty. Maeve looked back from the edge of the crowd, only seeing the door gap closing. She pulled her cape together, blocking the second camera that turned toward it a beat too late. Han Yu, Nora's voice drilled into his earpiece, urgent but hushed. Where are you going now? Han Yu walked to the back door, and before pushing it open, he looked back once at the sea of white flowers in the Osborne atrium. To save people, Han Yu had just cut through the blood-stained bandage when Nora's voice exploded in his earpiece. Found it. A row of items was spread out on the folding table in the safe house. 2 sedatives, 3 coin-sized signal jammers, and a black core residue analyzer, its casing still bearing scratches from the lower level of the Osborne private laboratory. The wound on Han Yu's left flank was sealed with black fluid, its edges still burning hot. He lowered his head and pressed a new bandage onto it, his knuckles turning white from the pressure. Location. What's the rush? Look at the list I sent you first. The old projector on the wall lit up, the image stuttering twice before displaying an invitation with a gold border. Rubber Man's private charity party. Time, drinks, guest dress code, donation seating. The layout was as exquisite as the pages of a celebrity magazine. Mixed in the list of names below were talent agents, producers, bought outsourced medical consultants, and several heads of shell companies for the Compound V project that Han Yu had seen before. The sound of Nora typing was sharp and fast. The remaining Osborne financial chain was cut very cleanly, but they didn't change one payment habit. After the cold chain fleet withdrew from the hospital's lower level, 3 cleaning fees, 2 party setup fees, and 1 pet transport insurance payment were all sent to the same shell company. Pets. Yeah, they really know how to name things. Cages, sedatives, muscle relaxants, all listed under exotic pet transport. Nora dragged the screen down. Look here. At the end of the guest list, there were a few extra lines with numbers instead of names. A31, A44, B07, K16. Each number was followed by dosage, weight, and transfer status. The words, failed product, were abbreviated as FP, with small red text next to them. Highly aggressive, requires double sedation. Han Yu pushed the sedatives into the strap on his leg. Click. There was a pause from Nora's end. Don't just bring that. I have the jammers too. Did I compliment you? Her voice lowered. That place of Rubber Man's is underground, and the walls are lined with old-fashioned shielding mesh. If VOTS people want to silence you, they only need 3 steps: cut the power, release gas, and lock the doors. You're bringing 2 sedatives, 3 jammers, and a crappy analyzer. How is that any different from walking into a slaughterhouse carrying takeout? Han Yu stuffed the black core residue analyzer into a waterproof bag. The analyzer can identify black fluid residue. Someone in that group might have been contaminated a second time. Your flank is still bleeding. It's sealed. Nora cursed half a sentence in Spanish, and the sound of the electronic lock unlocking came from the door. Han Yu looked up to see Nora rushing in with her laptop bag, her hair tied up messily, her jacket zipper stuck halfway, and the shadows of an all-nighter under her eyes. She slammed a black electronic key onto the table. Spare door. Han Yu glanced at it. How did you get this? Rubber Man's party security system was outsourced to 2 idiots. One of them sent the test access to their private email, and I just happened to grab it. Nora grabbed the key and pressed it into his palm. Take it. The key was small, its metal edge pressing into the lines of his palm near his wound. Her fingertips touched his palm, lingering for half a second before pulling back as if burned. She turned back to the screen. Don't lose it. If you lose it, I'll sell your safe house electricity bill to VOT. Han Yu closed his fingers. Got it. Nora didn't reply and clicked on another folder with her mouse. The screen changed to a gray-green surveillance feed. An iron cage took up half the frame. There were water stains on the floor, and an Asian girl was curled up in the corner. Her hair was so messy it covered half her face. Her wrists and forearms were covered in needle marks, and some places were patched with torn medical tape. Footsteps sounded outside the door. Her shoulders tensed first, then she suddenly looked up, a low, hoarse sound squeezing from her throat, like a beast ready to bite even after being wounded. Huey stood behind, the paper cup in his hand crushed, coffee leaking from the rim onto the floor. They're keeping her in a cage. His voice was wavering. Butcher leaned against the doorframe, his face so dark you could scrape a layer of ash off it. There are plenty of things in Vought's underground room that are more disgusting than this. In the surveillance, a staff member in white raised an electric baton. The girl shrank back, her back hitting the iron bars, which rattled with a series of clangs. Han Yu stared at the number in the bottom right corner of the screen. K-16. He didn't speak, but reached out and dragged K-16 into the red-marked column. Huey looked up. We're saving her, right? Yes. Han Yu paused the frame where the girl looked up. Get the access first, then enter. Butcher scoffed. Get the access? Are you planning to knock on the door and say, hello, could you lend me the key to save a few poor wretches stuffed in cages? There are ordinary people at the party. Han Yu stuck the 3 signal jammers into his lining in order. Rubber Man invited a bunch of celebrities and media scraps. If we raid directly, Vought will turn the cleanup into a terrorist attack, disposing of the people in the cages along with everyone else. Then raid quickly. Quick doesn't mean clean. Han Yu picked up the electronic key and put it into his chest pocket. Access, shifts, underground structure. If we miss one, people will die. Butcher walked 2 steps closer, his leather boots stepping through the coffee on the floor. You're talking more and more like those caped fools these days, Mr. Hero. Huey interjected. I think Han Yu is right. Back with Robin, if there had only been a broken piece of street surveillance, Vought would have already. He stopped halfway through, his Adam's apple bobbing. Han Yu looked at Butcher. That word isn't that dirty. What, hero? Han Yu pulled his jacket zipper up to his chest. It's not a dirty word. Butcher narrowed his eyes and finally spat out. Fine, Saint Sentinel. You want the access, I'll handle the surveillance. If they start cleaning up inside, I'll blow the door. Notify me before you blow the door. Depends on my mood. Nora turned the laptop toward Han Yu. Rubber Man's party starts at 10 tonight, and the entrance to the underground secret room has 3 layers of verification. Invitation QR code, temporary wristband inside, and internal access. I can forge the QR code, we can swap the wristbands after getting in, but for the internal access, we have to find the person carrying it. Han Yu looked down at the gray text popping up on the edge of the panel. Compound V Experiment Survivor Transfer Window, remaining 3 hours 42 minutes and 11 seconds. K-16 Individual Status, High Alert Drug Residue Violent Stress. Rubber Man's private underground secret room, risk level increased. He closed the floating layer to prevent Huey from seeing his gaze lingering too strangely. Nora picked up a black headset strap from the edge of the table. Come here. I'll do it myself. If you do it yourself, you'll press the receiver under your hair and then play hide and seek with me on the 3rd underground level. She reached out and pressed his shoulder down. Lower your head. Han Yu lowered his head. She was close, the heat from the computer's cooling fan mixed with the scent of peppermint falling against his ear. The strap wound around the back of his neck, her fingertips pressing the metal clasp through his hair, her movements far more patient than her words. Hair blocks the signal, she muttered. Cut it. Don't. Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything. Nora's fingers paused behind his ear, then pressed the strap down firmly. If you don't come back, I'll have to review the surveillance footage with that stinking face of Butcher's. Just thinking about it is annoying. Han Yu turned his face. I'll treat you to a meal when I get back. Nora's hand paused. Huey pretended to look at the screen, but his eyes drifted over. Butcher let out a very light, cold laugh, as if he'd heard some low-level joke. Han Yu added, not a convenience store sandwich. Nora looked up and glared at him. Just make sure you come back alive first. She stepped back and opened the headset test window. Speak. Nora. Signal is normal. She quickly lowered her head, the tips of her ears glowing red from the screen light. Say one more thing. Han Yu looked at her. I will bring the people behind the door out. The typing stopped. Nora synced the authorization code for the spare electronic key to his watch, and a line of green text popped up on the screen. Temporary access permission copied, remaining uses, 1. The key only has one use. She shoved her hands into her jacket pockets, her fingers clenching inside. Use it on the door that matters most. Butcher shoved his gun into the back of his waistband. I'm going to find Rubber Man's driver for tonight. Someone has to deliver the goods and the people for a party like that. Huey wiped up the coffee on the floor, the tissue in his hand getting smaller and smaller as he squeezed it. What can I do? Keep an eye on the public guest list. Han Yu handed him a backup memory card. Who cancels last minute, who gets added suddenly, whose social media account goes silent early, write it all down. Okay. Han Yu checked his gear one last time. 2 sedatives on his leg, 3 jammers in his lining, the black core residue analyzer against his ribs, the spare electronic key pressed against his chest, feeling a bit hard through the fabric. The sound of distant sirens came from outside the safe house, and the projector on the wall was still on the surveillance footage of K-16. The girl was curled up in the corner of the iron cage, her eyes raised, staring fixedly at the lens. Han Yu reached out, dragged the Rubber Man party invitation to the center of the main screen, and pinned the K-16 number next to it. The 2 red frames connected into a single line. Nora's voice came through the earpiece, steadier than before. Sentinel, the channel is open. If you dare to disconnect, I'll curse at you until you crawl back. Han Yu pushed open the door, the key in his palm warmed by his body temperature. Copy that. When A-Train swiped open the door to the 3rd floor cold storage, his fingers were shaking so much he almost missed the sensor area. The red authorization light flashed twice, then turned green. He glanced back at the corridor. The security camera was slowly turning to the other side, and the footsteps of the patrolling guards, separated by 2 fire doors, sounded far away. Vought's cold chain area was always quiet, especially at this hour, only the low hum of the compressors pressed against the walls and drilled into his bones. He pulled the silver insulated bag off his shoulder, and as he unzipped it, 3 blue vials of compound verses lay in the condensation groove. A-Train licked his dry lips, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. The crisis regarding his seat in the 7 was pressing down on his neck. Starlight had joined, the Deep had caused trouble, Translucent was missing, and Homelander's gaze toward him looked more and more like he was looking at a broken prop. Every meeting, he could hear Ashley swallow the words, alternative plan. Alternative. That word was stickier than Robin's blood. A-Train picked up the syringe. Before he could even pull off the needle cap, a very soft knock came from outside the cold storage. Knock. He froze completely. Outside the door, Han Yu leaned against the metal doorframe, holding his phone in his left hand while his right hand pressed against the bandage on his flank. His black jacket was only half buttoned, with 2 coin-sized signal jammers tucked inside. The white light from the cold storage shone on his face, making the blood near the wound look even paler. Keep your hand steady, Han Yu said, flashing his phone screen at him. The last pinhole video was quite clear, the angle was more sincere than Vought's promotional videos. On the screen, A-Train was in a toilet stall, rolling up his sleeve as the needle pierced his vein, pushing the blue liquid in. He was panting, his eyes bloodshot. A-Train's Adam's apple bobbed. How did you get in here? Procurement records. Han Yu tilted his chin up. Nora tracked someone using a decommissioned medical vehicle's cold chain code to take 3 vials of compound V, and you even conveniently put the bill under the 7 Towers emergency losses. Is stealing always this convenient for you guys? Turn it off. A-Train lowered his voice. Right now, turn the video off. Han Yu didn't move. I don't have time to listen to you act like a tough guy. He pulled his phone back into his palm. The access code for Rubber Man's underground secret room, and the party security shift schedule. Give them to me. A-Train chuckled, the laugh caught in his teeth. Are you crazy? You ran to Vought's cold storage to block me, and you're threatening a member of the 7 with a video. A member of the 7. Han Yu looked at the syringe in his hand. Are you sure that will still count tomorrow? The air was lung-piercingly cold. The smile on A-Train's face vanished. The next second, a blue afterimage exploded inside the cold storage. The shelf labels rattled from the airflow, the insulated bag hit the floor, and the 3 vials of compound verses were pressed against his chest in his palm. He tried to bypass Han Yu and rush out the door, but just as he picked up speed, the toe of Han Yu's boot hooked the manual valve of the yellow liquid nitrogen pipeline by the wall. Click. White mist sprayed out. The floor began to ice over. A-Train's soul skidded across the thin layer of ice, the sharp screeching sound making his eardrums numb. His body spun out of control, his shoulder slamming into the storage racks, and an entire row of metal boxes clattered down. Bang! The first vial of compound versus shattered on the ground, the blue liquid crawling across the icy surface. The second one was crushed by the corner of the shelf, glass shards flying into the back of A-Train's hand. The cold storage alarm went off. A harsh red light swept across the walls, and Nora's hushed cursing came through Han Yu's earpiece. What's that noise on your end? I see the cold chain alarm triggered on the third floor. Han Yu, don't tell me you're running an ice skating rink in a VOD warehouse. He fell on his own. Bullshit. A-Train lay on the ground, his shoulder numb from the impact, clutching the last vial of compound versus tightly in his hand. Glass shards were embedded in his palm, yet he looked first at the spilled liquid on the floor, his eyes like a starving dog staring at an overturned food bowl. Han Yu walked over, his boot sole pinning down the unbroken compound verses. Crack. The glass tube made a faint sound beneath his boot. Don't step on it. A-Train jerked his head up, his voice cracking. Do you know how much that thing is worth? I do. Han Yu looked down at him. And I also know you need it right now. A-Train's chest rose and fell rapidly, the metabolism brought on by his speed ability and his drug addiction were both gnawing at him. He tried to stand up, but his soul slipped on the ice again, and his knee slammed back onto the floor. Pathetic. Han Yu showed him the phone screen again, this time switching to a different folder. The speed check lines from Robin's accident, blood sample numbers, A-Train's escape route, and the pinhole video, 4 thumbnails lined up in a row. Your seat, your addiction, your life. Han Yu's voice was chopped into segments by the alarm. You choose. A-Train stared at him, his teeth grinding with a clatter. What do you want the access for? Don't ask. Rubber Man's place has VOD people there, and there's a cleanup squad tonight, too. A-Train squeezed the words out. If you go in, you'll be sealed inside. Those guys won't care what you call yourself, Sentinel, they'll open fire as soon as they get the order. Han Yu pressed down a little harder with his foot. The cracks in the glass tube widened. A-Train's expression changed. He reached behind his waist, felt a black access card, and then paused. He stared at the blood seeping from Han Yu's flank, speaking as if he'd grabbed a lifeline. You're injured. That thing Osborn cooked up is still in you, isn't it? You won't last much longer. It's not your place to count my days. A-Train threw the access card onto the floor. Take it. The card slid to Han Yu's feet. Han Yu didn't bend down, he tapped the tip of his shoe against the compound verses. The shift schedule. A-Train gritted his teeth even harder, reaching inside his suit to pull out a small authorization key. He pressed it twice, and an encrypted schedule projected onto the cold storage wall. As the red light swept over it, the characters flickered. Han Yu raised his watch to scan it. Nora's typing immediately cut into his earpiece. Got it. Rubber Man's mansion perimeter security, 3 shifts. 4 in the pool area, 2 in the back kitchen, and the underground entrance is marked as a wine cellar. Ha, they listed the cleanup squad as equipment maintenance. They really know how to play the game. Copy it locally. It's already shoved into your watch, don't rush me. A-Train pushed himself up against the shelf, half his face pale from the cold mist. He watched as Han Yu took a photo of the access card and scanned the authorization key with his analytical vision, squeezing out a sentence from his throat. Are you trying to save the people inside? Han Yu nudged the last vial of compound verses away from under his foot without crushing it. A-Train stared at the medicine, his fingers twitching, then pulling back. Robin. His voice was much lower. Is there any chance for me to redeem that life? The alarm was still blaring. Han Yu bent down to pick up the access card, his fingertips brushing over the grooves on the edge. The cold storage was filled with the smell of chemical reagents and liquid nitrogen. His flank wound was frozen numb, and the remnants of the black core twitched against his flesh, like an ice needle stabbing into his ribs. He looked at A-Train. From now on, every person you save counts as paying back 1 coin on your debt. A-Train opened his mouth. No sound came out. Han Yu kicked the compound verses into the corner of the cold storage. The glass tube hit the wall base and stopped next to the blue spilled liquid. He didn't take it, nor did he destroy it. A-Train's gaze followed it, the muscles on his face twitching twice. Will you tell Huey? Depends on the speed of your repayment. A-Train raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, the glass shards in his palm cutting several gashes. He wanted to curse, his lips moving, but in the end, he only squeezed out, "Rubber Man has a back door for his pretty guests. The cleanup squad will seal the underground first, then deal with the people upstairs. You need to be fast." Route. The second half of the shift schedule. A-Train threw the authorization key over. "That's all I know." Han Yu caught the authorization key, and his watch vibrated. Hero popularity dashboard. Key insider control level increased. Member of the 7A Train. Mental stability, 31%. Compound versus contamination level, high risk. Usable intelligence. Rubber Man's underground secret room access, party security shift schedule, cleanup squad warning. Han Yu closed the dashboard and stuck a signal jammer to the inside of the cold storage door. The shrill alarm stuttered for a brief beat, and static appeared on the surveillance feed. Nora whistled. "Sentinel, you're getting better and better at threatening people. You used to care about evidence chains, now you're stepping on medicine vials. You have an opinion?" "No, it's quite cool." She paused, as if realizing she spoke too quickly, and immediately added, "I mean on a tactical level, don't think anything else." Han Yu sent the access card photo and the authorization key data over together. "You're in charge of opening the door, I'm in charge of bringing the people behind it out." The earpiece was silent for half a second. The sound of typing suddenly accelerated, clatter clatter, like someone dragging an entire table into a battlefield. "I can disguise the access code as secondary authorization from Rubber Man himself." Nora's voice was steady. "The cleanup squad channel hasn't come in yet. I need 3 minutes, 5 minutes at most. Don't rush in early, you hear me?" Han Yu, "I'm here. The channel is open." She hit the final heavy key. "This time, I'll open the door for you." Han Yu tucked the black access card into his inner pocket, raised his hand to press his flank, and turned to walk out of the cold storage. Behind him, A-Train stood beside the shattered compound V, looking down at the blood and glass shards in his palm. The red alarm light swept across his face. He bent down to pick up the unbroken syringe in the corner, his hand hovering in midair, before finally tossing it into the cold storage's waste syringe bin. Thud. Before the door closed, Han Yu heard that dull sound. When Han Yu walked out of the kitchen side door carrying a tray of champagne, the bandage on his left abdomen was pressed tight against his waiter's jacket. The poolside was packed with people, laughter, electronic music, and the clinking of wine glasses twisted together. 2 female guests in sequined dresses leaned against the pool edge taking selfies, the flash going off 3 times in a row, just enough to cover the short, sharp cry coming from somewhere beneath the ground. It was very low, like someone had shoved their throat into an iron pipe. Han Yu didn't stop, the tray tilted half an inch before he steadied it again. In his earpiece, the sound of Nora's typing was furiously dense. 2 security guards to the front left, the one in the blue suit has a gun behind his waist. A hidden camera above the pool light pole, and another behind the ice bucket at the bar on the right. Tisk, these fools want to film a panoramic view even of the pool. Where is Rubber Man? Due north, next to the glass railing, holding that blonde supermodel. Take 3 more steps and you'll see his punchable face. Han Yu wove through a group of guests laughing and raising their glasses, the scent of perfume and alcohol hitting his nose. Using the act of serving drinks, he scanned the floor. One of the marble tiles by the pool was a darker shade, it seemed suspiciously clean. The sound from the underground vent emerged again. Woo! A burst of laughter nearby crushed it. "Did you hear that?" Nora lowered her voice. I heard it too." By the glass railing, Rubber Man had his arm around the supermodel's shoulder, swirling his champagne with the other hand. A silver-black access ring peeked out from his cuff, the VOT logo pressed onto its surface, flashing ostentatiously under the lights. "The 7, of course I know them." Rubber Man smiled, his teeth gleaming. "The Deep owes me 2 favors, and Translucent has been here too. You know, people with real resources never wait in line to enter the 7 Tower, they call me." Someone whistled. "Whoa, for real, baby, why would I lie to you?" Rubber Man leaned down, whispering into the supermodel's ear, his voice intentionally loud. "Every inch of this place is legally registered, private charity foundation, rehabilitation project. VOT's legal team has reviewed the contracts, they're much more reliable than your agents." Han Yu placed the tray on a high table nearby. Click. He casually took off his white gloves. Nora gasped in his earpiece, "Han Yu, don't start anything by the pool. There are 3 cameras on the right I haven't frozen yet. Wait, I can cut one feed first." Han Yu had already walked behind Rubber Man. Rubber Man's laugh was still hanging on his lips. The next second, Han Yu's hand clamped onto the back of his neck, fingers pressing into his collar, and shoved him straight down. "Who, you?" Bang! Rubber Man's face smashed against the edge of the glass railing, the champagne glass flew away, and shards rolled into the pool. The supermodel screamed and backed away, her high heels stepping into the spilled alcohol, nearly falling over. Someone raised their phone. Han Yu didn't avoid the cameras, he grabbed Rubber Man by the hair and dragged him out of the crowd. Rubber Man's body began to stretch, his arms whipping backward like rubber bands, trying to wrap around Han Yu's waist. Han Yu drove his knee forward. Rubber Man's abdomen slammed heavily into the corner of a table, his entire arm went limp on the spot, and bottles crashed to the ground with a clatter. "Do you know who I am?" Rubber Man roared, lying on the slippery floor. "This is a private residence. Private property. If you dare touch me, Vought will." Han Yu dragged him through the spilled alcohol, his soles crushing glass shards. No introduction needed. He dragged Rubber Man all the way from the poolside to that darker marble tile. The guests around them parted like they had been sliced by a knife, screaming as they backed away. A few security guards were just about to draw their guns when the indicator lights on the cameras above the light poles flickered in unison. Nora's voice drilled into his earpiece, 3 cameras on the right are frozen. I didn't block all the live mobile streams, I left 2 feeds open as you requested. The angle is great, they can see his cuff. Turn on wide area recording. It's on. By the way, you look like a debt collector right now. That's exactly what I am. Rubber Man struggled to lift his head, his neck stretching longer than a normal person's, and the smile on his face finally cracked. He caught sight of the surrounding phone cameras and immediately tried to pull his hand into his sleeve. Han Yu grabbed his wrist and twisted it in front of the cameras. The silver-black access ring was exposed under the lights of dozens of phones. "Get a clear shot." Han Yu swept his eyes over the crowd. "Vought access ring, private charity foundation, underground rehabilitation project." That's what he just said. The crowd exploded. "Vought, is that really the Vought logo on his hand? What's down here?" A security guard pushed through, his gun only halfway raised when Han Yu hooked a wine bottle on the ground with his toe, spinning it out to smash into the guard's wrist. The gun fell into the pool, water splashing onto the hem of a female guest's dress nearby. Short and crisp, Rubber Man panted against the floor, still talking tough, "This is illegal trespassing. You have no warrant, no authorization, I can sue you. The access control here is only open to the foundation's internal staff, understand? Legal private property." Han Yu dragged him to the center of the patterned floor, crouched down, and gripped his chin. "Then open it legally." He grabbed Rubber Man's face and pressed it against a dark pattern on the floor. "Let go. Are you crazy?" "I said I don't." A thin blue light lit up beneath the marble. An access scanner rose half an inch from the seams of the floor, its cold light scanning Rubber Man's iris and access ring. "Secondary authorization confirmed." A mechanical female voice came from beneath the floor. The poolside went quiet for a beat. Nora cursed in his earpiece, "There really is an underground door. Han Yu, there's independent power and biosignal shielding down there, I can only see the first 20 meters. The back door extraction team is in place." Butcher is cursing, "He's asking if you can avoid setting the whole party on fire. Tell him to cut the crap." I should relay that word for word. Relay it. The marble tiles split down the middle and slid into the floor on both sides. Cold air pushed out from the gap, carrying the stench of dampness, rust, disinfectant, and rotting fabric from deeper within. Several nearby guests covered their mouths, knocking over a high table as they retreated. The crying coming from underground became clear. 1 sound, 2 sounds, intermittent. Han Yu picked up Rubber Man and tossed him down the first flight of stairs. Rubber Man rolled twice, his arms instinctively stretching to grab the railing, he didn't dare curse again. Before following him down, Han Yu turned his head to look at the nearest phone camera. "Keep filming." The young man holding the phone had fingers shaking so hard the screen wobbled, but he gritted his teeth and nodded. Okay. The lights in the underground passage were forced on, turning on one by one, casting a pale light into the depths. Water droplets clung to the walls, and the exhaust fan turned with a rusted grind, the sound like broken gears gnawing on bones. Han Yu stepped down the last stair, his side wound tugged, and the residual black core beneath his jacket tightened against his skin. He pressed it with the back of his hand and didn't stop. At the end of the passage, the back door lock clicked open with a beep. Butcher walked in carrying a gun, Huey following behind him, his face deathly pale. Both of them were covered in dust from the underground parking lot. As soon as Butcher entered, he saw Rubber Man lying on the floor. "Yo, the host of the party is still alive." Butcher grinned. "I thought you would have stuffed him into the sewer." "He's useful alive." Huey's gaze went past Rubber Man, looking into the depths of the passage. His Adam's apple bobbed. "What is that sound?" No one answered. Han Yu kicked open the plastic curtain next to the first iron door. The light drilled inside. Inside was a row of cages. Iron bars lined the wall deep into the shadows. Each cage was only the size of a single bed, some covered with dirty blankets, others having only a sink and a drainage hole. A man so thin his shoulder bones protruded huddled in the corner, burying his face in his arms when he heard footsteps. In the next cage, a woman had her wrists wrapped in strips of cloth, the cloth long since hardened by blood. Further away, there was the sound of children crying. Huey took a step forward, then stepped back, his fingers gripping the gun strap so hard his knuckles turned white. The curse in Butcher's mouth got stuck. He was used to Vought's dirty business, but the row of cages before him still made his face sink. That tongue that always loved to provoke seemed to be nailed behind his teeth, and after a long while, he only spat out one word. Rubber Man crawled up from the edge of the stairs, his face smeared with dust and alcohol. He still wanted to smile, but his lips trembled, and he only managed to squeeze out, "They signed the documents, it's all voluntary treatment, the Foundation has medical permits, you have no authority." Han Yu turned around, grabbed him by the collar, and dragged him to the first row of iron cages. The man in the cage shook even harder. Han Yu pressed Rubber Man's face against the iron bars, the metal clanging with a loud bang. "Look at him and say it." Rubber Man's eyes darted around. "Say they are voluntary." The man raised his head, his lips cracked, unable to make a complete sound. There was a ring of an old collar mark on his neck, the skin worn black. Rubber Man shut his mouth. Han Yu. The background noise on Norris' end vanished, leaving only her soft breathing. "I'm recording. 3 copies in the cloud, 2 external. Also, there are more bio signals underground than I thought, at least 27. Han Yu let go of Rubber Man and kicked him against the wall. "Huey, find the ones who can walk. Butcher, keep an eye on him." Butcher pressed the muzzle of his gun against Rubber Man's forehead, smiling without warmth. "Baby, move 1 inch, and I'll stretch you out and tie you in a knot." Huey nodded frantically, walked to the nearest cage, then discovered he couldn't open the lock, looking up in a panic. "Han Yu, where's the key? These locks all require electronic authorization. Don't touch the doors yet." Han Yu took off his jacket and threw it through the iron bars into a cage on the left. A teenager was curled up inside, looking quite young, wrapped only in a piece of dirty cloth, his shoulders trembling constantly. He stared at Han Yu, as if staring at a new guard, and after a long while, reached out to pull the jacket over, quickly covering himself. "Don't be afraid." Huey crouched nearby, his voice raspy. "We'll take you out, really, we." The teenager buried his face in the jacket and didn't answer. Han Yu raised his hand to signal Huey to step back half a step. His super perception pressed along the passage into the depths, the sound of dripping water, breathing, and the friction of iron chains layered over each other. At the very end, there was one breath that was exceptionally low, pressed in the throat like a beast. He walked over. The further in he went, the dimmer the lights became. The walls had scratch marks, dried blood, and torn plastic ID tags. The last iron cage was thicker than the ones before, with double-layered bars and a manual steel bolt added to the lock. A woman was crouching inside the cage. Her messy black hair hung beside her face, her fingers pressed against the concrete floor, broken nails digging into the cracks. Her body was tensed in a posture ready to pounce at any moment, a low hiss rolling in her throat. She didn't look at Rubber Man, nor did she look at Butcher or Huey. She stared at Han Yu. Han Yu stopped half an arm's length away. In his earpiece, Norris' voice was very soft. "This one in the deepest part doesn't have a complete file. Only a partial codename, suspected to have been sent in via an overseas transport line. Han Yu, her heart rate is terrifyingly high. Butcher walked 2 steps closer from behind, saw those eyes, and unconsciously lowered his gun slightly. This girl could bite someone's throat out. Don't get close. Han Yu crouched down, placing his empty hands in front of his knees, letting her see clearly that he wasn't holding any weapons. The woman in the iron cage tightened her throat, her broken nails digging further into the concrete, blood seeping from under her fingertips. She didn't call for help, nor did she retreat, only those eyes remained locked onto everyone's movements. Huey asked quietly from behind, "What's her name?" Han Yu looked at the scratched-up ID tag on the inside of the iron cage. Only half a letter and an old scratch remained on it. Kimiko. As this name fell, the red warning lights at the other end of the underground passage lit up silently. Butcher spun around, his gun stock pressed against his shoulder socket. The sound of keyboards exploded on Norris' end. Han Yu, someone is accessing the access control at the other end of the underground, very fast. The cleanup channel is online. Han Yu didn't look away. He pressed his palm against the cold iron bars, the residual black core writhing against his skin under his cuff. Kimiko stared at his hand, the hiss in her throat lower. Red lights lit up one by one toward the depths. The first gunshot exploded right against the iron bars. Kimiko recoiled sharply into the corner of the cage, her broken nails scraping against the cement, a sound as piercing as a knife blade grazing bone. Han Yu's palm was still pressed against the railing when black core surged from his cuff, snapping into a semicircular shield. Bullets struck it, the metal tips embedding into the black surface before being squeezed into flat discs and dropping to the floor. Destroy the living evidence. Repeat, destroy the living evidence. The loudspeaker at the other end of the corridor crackled with static, and red lights lit up one after another. 2 VOT cleanup crew members in black protective vests pressed in from the end of the hall, their gun muzzles sweeping across the cages. Guards were shouting behind them, footsteps chaotic. Huey. Han Yu didn't look back, his left abdomen throbbed numbly from the movement, warmth seeping out from under the bandages. He pushed the black core shield forward, blocking the second round of gunfire. Take those who can walk and retreat first. Keep your heads down, stick to the right wall, and don't look at the gun muzzles. Huey was supporting a man so thin his knees were shaking, dragging a boy draped in a waiter's jacket with his other hand, his face deathly pale. What about you? Go. Bullets smashed against it again. Clang, 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 clang. The narrow corridor was filled with the crisp sound of shell casings hitting the floor. Some victims in the cages screamed, some buried their heads in their arms, but most couldn't even squeeze out a sound, just shivering in the corners of their cages. Butcher slammed Rubber Man against the wall, pressing his gun muzzle against the back of his neck. You good dog. Rubber Man's shoulders suddenly collapsed, his entire body melting like wax. His arm elongated, sliding halfway out from under Butcher's elbow. He squeezed out a plea. Listen to me, I can turn off the authorization, I have the clearance, I can. Bang. Han Yu stomped on his wrist. No bones broke, but the rubber-like muscle was pressed into a thin sheet against the floor, and Rubber Man's face twisted in pain. Black core crawled up from Han Yu's feet, 3 tentacles wrapping around Rubber Man's waist, shoulder, and throat, twisting him up onto the ceiling pipes, facing the row of iron cages. Nora. Record. Nora's suppressed voice came through the earpiece. Your chest camera has 37% battery left, the footage is uploading to the cloud. The 2 mobile feeds kept above are still recording, the angle can capture him in the cages. Han Yu looked up at Rubber Man. Talk. Private Charitable Foundation, Rehabilitation Project, VOT Authorization Ring. Miss one word, and I'll tear off one of your fingers. Rubber Man's Adam's apple was caught on the edge of black core, his voice cracking. I didn't know there were so many in here. The contract was signed by the foundation. VOT Legal reviewed it, but I only handle the venue and donor reception, please, don't kill me. Louder. The VOT authorization ring can open the underground system. I have the clearance, I can cooperate. A woman in an iron cage raised her head, her eyelids swollen, staring at the silver-black insignia on Rubber Man's cuff. An old man beside her gripped the bars, his knuckles gray with dirt. They started looking at Han Yu. The look in their eyes was strange, wrapped in fear, like animals kept caged too long seeing light from a crack in the door, their first reaction to bite their own tongues to confirm if this pain would be worse. Han. Butcher pulled a block of plastic explosives from his backpack and bit open the tape. The electronic locks won't open, use this, hurry. Put it down. Are you out of your mind? Their people have already killed their way in. Han Yu turned sideways, the black core shield pressing forward against the line of fire for 3 steps, his other hand pointing to the iron doors. Impact will shatter the people inside. Look at them, how much more can they take right now? Butcher cursed, the explosives in his hand hovering in midair. Then you do it. I will. Han Yu walked to the first iron door. The electronic lock flashed a red dot. The girl crouching inside hugged her knees and moved backward, a short, sobbing sound squeezing from her throat. Don't touch the door, Han Yu said in a low voice. I'm picking the lock. Black core drilled out from between his fingers, thin as black steel wires, sliding into the lock cavity along the door gap. A creaking sound of metal deforming came from inside. The veins on the back of Han Yu's hand bulged, his left abdominal wound twitched, and he gritted his back teeth as black core suddenly expanded. Click. The latch burst open from the inside, and the entire iron door was pulled a finger's width apart. The girl stared at him, not moving. Han Yu stepped back half a pace, clearing the way. If you can stand, go. Huey is over by the right wall to receive you. Keep your head down, don't run in a straight line. When the girl crawled out, her knee hit the threshold, and she shuddered in pain, but she still crawled out. The second door, the third. Black core drilled in, expanded, tore. Iron doors were pried open one by one, the latches hitting the floor with sounds growing heavier each time. The cleanup crew pressed a few meters closer from the distance. Butcher used short bursts of fire to force them back to the corner, cursing non-stop, "Hurry, Han, hurry." Hiss. A piece of shrapnel cut a gash in Han Yu's arm. Black core immediately wrapped around the edge of the wound, not lunging out. He suppressed the coldness and continued to pick the next lock. A man with protruding bones came out of a cage, almost collapsing after taking 2 steps. Han Yu reached out to support his arm. The man was shaking violently, but his eyes were fixed on the open door. Carl Pike. Han Yu scanned the broken number on his chest. The man's lips moved, but no sound came out. To the right. If you get out alive, your name can be written back into the files. Carl leaned against the wall, dragging his legs toward Huey. Huey had already stuffed 2 survivors into the side maintenance door and turned back to receive the third, flustered and nearly dropping his rifle sling. Don't push me, I can catch them. No, I can't. Butcher, don't let them shoot. Butcher didn't even look back. Less talk, kid. Han Yu pried open the last row of ordinary iron cages, and over a dozen people squeezed into the corridor. Some were wrapped in blankets, some were barefoot, stepping on shell casings, trails of blood extending toward the evacuation route. When those people passed by Han Yu, they all skirted around Black Core, but none of them retreated back into the cages. Only the reinforced iron cage remained in the deepest part. Kimiko was still crouching inside. Behind the double-layered bars, her eyes shone black under the red light. Every time a gunshot rang out, her shoulders and neck tightened, her broken nails digging into the cement cracks again. She looked at Han Yu, and also at the people escaping behind him, the low growl in her throat never stopping. This one is faster with explosives. Butcher ejected the empty magazine, his fingers steady as he reloaded. If she lunges out, you won't be able to block her many times. Han Yu glanced at him. Butcher tutted, moving his gun muzzle toward the end of the corridor. Fine, your savior act better be useful. Han Yu didn't reply. He pressed his hand onto the outer latch of the reinforced cage, and black core drilled into the gap along the steel bolt. The inner lock structure was more complex, with a manual catch inside. Black core was pinched, emitting a high-pitched friction sound. Han Yu pressed the base of his palm firmly against the iron door, the bandage on his left abdomen completely soaked through. Nora's voice drilled into the earpiece. Your body temperature is dropping. Han Yu, don't let black core expand, I see your shoulder line is off. Watch the cleanup crew. I can only see the front section, the depths are all shielded. Then listen to the gunshots. There was a half-beat pause on Nora's end, then the keyboard clacked again. 3 cleanup crew members are reloading behind the corner, 1 guard is running to the control room. I'm trying to jam his access card, give me 20 seconds. Click. The first steel bolt popped open. Kimiko lunged forward violently, grabbing the inner bars with both hands, her teeth close to the metal gap. Huey had just doubled back from the side door and saw her movement, his gun only halfway raised. Don't raise your gun, Han Yu said in a low voice. Shield, don't. Huey's throat bobbed, and the gun muzzle lowered half an inch. The second steel bolt was pushed open from the inside by black core. Han Yu grabbed the edge of the iron door, using his shoulders and back to exert force, and the entire reinforced door was torn and deformed outward, bolts dragging chunks of cement out from the wall. With a boom, the door opened. Kimiko lunged out. The speed was too fast. Huey's hand was still on his gunsling, and Butcher had only turned half a shoulder. Han Yu only had time to cross his left arm in front of him, and those razor-like nails slashed across his forearm, tearing through the fabric and flesh. Blood gushed out instantly. Black core instinctively exploded along the wound, as if trying to curl back around her wrists. Han Yu tightened his fingers, forcibly pressing black core back to the edge of the wound, letting it only wrap around his own injury. After landing, Kimiko retreated again, her back pressed against the wall, a fiercer hiss rolling from her throat. Her fingers were stained with Han Yu's blood, her eyes sweeping over black core, over Butcher's gun, and finally nailing back onto Han Yu's face. Han Yu didn't stand up straight. He slowly crouched down, maintaining half an arm's distance from her, and fished a bag of compressed food from the small pouch at his waist, placed it on the floor, and pushed it toward her a little. Then, he took off his black hooded jacket and folded it next to the food. The jacket smelled of sweat, rust, and the sweet, cloying scent of party drinks splashed from above. There was no smell of laboratory disinfectant. Kimiko didn't take it. She stared at him, the whites of her eyes bloodshot, her lips cracked, hissing lowly, as if any hand that approached her would become a new chain. Han Yu lowered his injured left arm, letting black core stop at the edge of the wound, not crossing half an inch beyond the jacket. Kimiko. Her pupils constricted. I'm here to remove the collar. Han Yu's voice was very low. I won't put a new one on you. Gunshots rang out again at the end of the corridor, the cleanup crew's shouts amplified by the loudspeaker. Prepare for level 2 clearance, seal the ventilation ducts. Butcher's expression changed. Level 2 clearance. They're going to release something. Nora cursed in the earpiece, her voice tight. The underground gas valves have new instructions. Han Yu, retreat, retreat immediately. Kimiko was still crouching at the door of the iron cage, her blood-stained fingers pressing against the floor. The bag of food sat in front of her, the black jacket lifted at one corner by the wind in the corridor. Han Yu didn't reach out to urge her. The red lights shone on the rows of open iron cages, the empty cages swaying, the latches still rolling on the floor. Deep in the corridor, new alarm sounds rang out.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.